Chapter 684. He was wondering why this group of beasts didn't move after coming down. If Lu Ren had been a moment slower, he would have pulled the copper ring away. Who knew if this mouth would have bitten off his hand? Ji Mengmeng glanced at Lu Ren and rolled her eyes. They were all array masters. She didn't know why Lu Ren's vigilance was so low. They were all swimming in the water and couldn't talk to each other. Seeing that the copper ring in front of them had turned into a human mouth, everyone subconsciously scattered far away. Only Qiao Jin didn't move. The moment the mouth came out, she pushed the mud away even more. A woman's gray face suddenly appeared at the bottom of the pool. She had died here for many years. Her face had been soaked in mud until it was extremely pale, but her original appearance could still be vaguely seen. Her mouth was open, and her sharp teeth and eyes were staring. All of this showed how terrifying she was. Ordinary people would probably have nightmares for 3 to 5 years after seeing her. Especially when Qiao Jin pushed her away, the woman's eyes at the bottom of the pool moved. Her gloomy eyes glanced directly at Qiao Jin. Ji Mengmeng. Xiao Yuandan. The two of them were so scared that they almost screamed. Even for array masters, it was rare to see such a terrifying scene. Only Lu Xian and the other array master, Tang Yiming, were very calm. Lu Ren was so scared that he swam as far away as he could. Array masters were suitable for fighting on land. The water was pitch black, and now they saw something that only appeared in horror movies. This was too much of a test of their endurance. Qiao Jin didn't change at all. She even directly waved her hand to slap the woman's cheek. The woman's expression suddenly became incredulous, but there was nothing she could do. Qiao Jin's palm didn't hit her cheek, because she turned into a cloud of smoke and blended into the soil, as if she had disappeared naturally. Underneath her head was a copper ring that looked exactly the same as her head. This was the real entrance. Only Qiao Jin didn't take this seriously. If it were other array masters, they would probably be bitten until they started to doubt their life. Qiao Jin pulled open the entrance of the copper ring without hesitation. Bang! The movement in the water should have been very small, but everyone seemed to hear a drumbeat in their hearts. Dong dong dong, it was very shocking. As the copper ring was pulled open, a glaring light leaked out. The surrounding caves, cliffs, ponds, and mud all began to sink down along with the copper rings. It was as if a vacuum had appeared below. At that moment, everyone realized that their bodies were no longer under their control and they were sliding down. It was not that there was a door under the copper ring, but the moment the copper ring was pulled, the surrounding scenery started to change. They continued to fall uncontrollably, and the water became thinner. Splash! The sound of water exploding suddenly came into contact with the air, and everything became clear. The few array formation masters were at a loss as they could not stop their bodies from falling. Qiao Jin's body was light as a feather. As he fell, he saw the things around him explode as though they had turned into starlight. Amidst the sparkling starlight, they looked like memory fragments that floated in midair. They mixed with the soil and were not obvious at all. Qiao Jin reached out and grabbed a piece of debris. Then, she felt a strong attractive force. Even she couldn't control it as it pulled her into some place. With a boom in front of her, everything returned to silence. Chapter 685. When she woke up, drops of water were falling on her cheeks. A drop of water hit her eyelashes. She opened her eyes and saw that she was lying in a cave. Backtracking array. She frowned and looked down. Her clothes had changed. She was only wearing a thin white dress. She was surrounded by a cave, dripping with water. It was dark and damp. Ji Mengmeng and the others were gone, but she felt that nothing had happened to them. To be able to pull her array, this array point was definitely not simple. There was also an array master. Although the situation in front of her was a little out of control, she still calmly turned over and sat up. Drip, there was only a very quiet dripping sound around. There was a glimmer of light in front of her, like an exit. She stood up and wanted to walk along the light, but found that she couldn't walk out. Was she trapped? There shouldn't be an array in this world that could trap her. She felt for a moment, and her face suddenly changed. She was the one who had set up this formation. Was she trapped in the array she set up? But why was that? She looked at the surrounding stone walls. The light in the cave was not as dim as before. With the help of the light, she saw some patterns engraved on the stone walls. There were some simple drawings of people kneeling and worshipping something. When she looked forward, she found that it was a person. This figure was only a back view. Compared to the simple kneeling human in the painting, this person's lines were exaggerated to the point of being very tall. He was wearing a long robe. Only this figure, although thin, had a kind of aura that made people want to prostrate themselves in worship. She looked at the engraved figure faintly and felt a familiar feeling from it. She knew this person. And he wasn't from this era, but from 10,000 years ago. Suddenly, she felt a cold breath on her cheek, as if someone was touching her cheek. Her mind moved, but she didn't feel any dangerous aura. A very familiar voice sounded, with a gentle longing and a distant sigh. "Are you cold?" Song Yanqing. She wanted to turn her head, but she didn't see anything. The cave was empty, and there was no Song Yanqing's figure. The touch on her cheek seemed to have disappeared, but there was still a lingering feeling of dependence. "Song Yanqing." She spoke, and her voice echoed in the cave. She knew that this was not real, but she felt that Song Yanqing was here. Which Song Yanqing was it? She frowned and suddenly realized that her amnesia was not as simple as it seemed. She was the one who had set up the array, so why did she sense Song Yanqing inside the array? At this moment, thousands of miles away in the imperial capital, a man who had been resting on his bed suddenly opened his eyes. His pupils were as black as ink, but at this moment, his eyes were clear and bright, as if he hadn't woken up at all. Song Yanqing. That voice belonged to Qiao Jin. He didn't know where it came from, but he heard a series of echoes. He frowned and sat up in his black pajamas. He found that the black gas in the corners of the room had already reached the point where it was corroding the entire room. When he listened carefully, there seemed to be the whispers of demons. Just a little bit more and it would devour the bed where Song Yanqing was lying. Seeing that he had woken up, the black aura instantly rolled and disappeared. He only stared at the slowly disappearing black aura, without the slightest bit of panic. Borrowing the hazy light outside the window, his gentle and handsome side profile added a trace of coldness. Chapter 686. He got up and put on a coat. Outside, he could hear Adan's steady breathing. A faint light flashed through his black eyes. If there was any movement, Adan would sense it. With that thought, he closed his eyes and thought about Qiao Jin's direction. He couldn't think about Qiao Jin directly. That way, he wouldn't be able to determine her location. He could use another method. After about a minute, Song Yanqing's face paled for a moment. In the next second, the space around him twisted. When he opened his eyes, a gust of cold wind hit him. It was so cold that it made him shiver. He coughed heavily. He was surrounded by a dense forest, but there was a waterfall in front of him. A bright moon hung in the sky. The moon was dim and cold, reflecting Song Yanqing's pale face. He clenched his fists, covered his mouth, and coughed heavily. He felt his strength drain away, and he felt a little dizzy. It wasn't that his body was too weak, but that he had forcefully teleported from the capital to here. He had used the power of a spiritual master of speech. His current strength wasn't enough to teleport such a long distance, so his body couldn't withstand it. But he still came. Because he heard Xiao Jin calling him. Looking at the scene in front of him, he suddenly thought of the scene in his dream. He frowned. He didn't know if Xiao Jin had encountered some problem. The surroundings were quiet. Xiao Jin had already walked along the stone wall and finished looking at the simple murals. It seemed to be a scene of a sacrifice. Unfortunately, other than the man in the picture, the rest of the pictures didn't express much. The only difference was that Xiao Jin felt that the murals in array were from 10,000 years ago. There was no trace of the so-called ancient array master from 4,000 years ago. Could it be that their survey was wrong? She stared at the murals for a while and suddenly felt that something was wrong. The tall figure was still flickering with a dim light, and it didn't seem to be from the mural itself. Xiao Jin stretched out her hand to dig at the wall. The seemingly hard stone wall seemed to have been marked by someone long ago. When Xiao Jin's hand touched it, she felt some marks. Her fingertips hung, and a piece of broken stone fell down. Then, a small blue stone fell out of it. It was a small blue stone. It was very ordinary and had a little bit of light, but it didn't have the texture of a gem. The moment she held the stone, the deep and cold voice rang in her ears again. "Do you like it? This is for you." She looked around to make sure she hadn't heard wrong. It was indeed Song Yanqing's voice. However, she also knew that it was impossible for Song Yanqing to appear here, nor did he give her anything like this. She thought of the memories she had lost, and her eyes suddenly became deep. Could the things she had forgotten be related to Song Yanqing? But wasn't Song Yanqing a modern person? How could he be related to her from 10,000 years ago? Looking at the back figure with a heavy gaze, Xiao Jin realized that she still couldn't remember anything. The only thing she could remember was that this voice was too familiar to her. It was Song Yanqing's voice. It was as if he had always been by her side. It was rare for her to frown. She realized that the memories she had lost might be more important than she thought. She didn't feel any danger. She only saw a cloud of fog. This cloud of fog was related to Song Yanqing. Chapter 687. The first time she saw Song Yanqing, she saw it on him. He had the ability of a spiritual master of speech and was entangled by the Rakshasa realm. All these signs indicated that he was not an ordinary person. But she did not see any connection between him and the old era. There was another possibility. The voice she imagined might be someone else's voice. It was only because she was too familiar with Song Yanqing that she recognized it as Song Yanqing's voice. There was this possibility, but it was not big. She pinched the stone and was still in deep thought. The scene in front of her changed instantly. She heard Lu Ren's terrified voice. "What do you mean? You want to kill us?" She narrowed her eyes for a moment and stood up in an instant. The scene around her had changed drastically. She was in an underground palace. The Lu Ren in front of her had a sense of fear and hatred towards her. Ji Mengmeng was lying in the distance. The others were also looking at her with shocked eyes. Xiao Jin looked at her hand and looked at Lu Ren again. She only saw a group of array formations coming towards her, flickering with raging flames. She waved her hand and blocked it. Her eyes were cold. "Who did you say wanted to kill you?" Lu Ren gritted his teeth. "You want to kill us? Stop pretending. You actually attacked us behind our backs." Xiao Jin instantly understood some problems. She only said, "I wasn't here just now." No matter what happened, what you saw just now was an illusion. She only stretched out her hand and pulled. The red silk threads covered the sky and covered the earth, surrounding the entire underground palace tightly. She glanced around. She could only see that this was a grand hall, but it was all made of stone. There were few shadows of buildings from the later era. Qiao Jin roughly understood. This underground palace was the residence of the real 4,000 years old ancient array masters. You think it's an illusion just because you say so. Lu Xiandu's face was dark. You attacked Ji Mengmeng directly just now. Qiao Jin glanced at them. If I want to attack you, you won't be able to leave this place alive. Among the red threads, there were already strange light spots flashing and fleeing. Qiao Jin looked at the combined formation and only said in a low voice, "It's just the lowest level of camouflage. You can't even see through this. You've really impressed me." The illusion was fake. It was impossible for her to have her strength. If she wanted to kill this group of people, she could do it silently. Why would she need to go through so much trouble? Lu Ren, you. His face was flushed red. Qiao Jin couldn't be bothered with them. He walked straight to the deepest part of the hall. The hall was very empty, and the walls were made of stone. There were stone pillars at the four corners, and there was kerosene at the top of the stone pillars, as if it was originally burning with flames. It was probably used for lighting. However, after a few thousand years, it had long dried up into a pitch-black lump. In the deepest part of the hall, there was a high platform. On the high platform, there was a stone coffin. The stone coffin hadn't decayed or weathered for thousands of years, and it was completely sealed. It was as if the coffin's mouth and body were directly cast. There wasn't a single gap, and no one could find a way to open it. However, Qiao Jin felt that the array point was inside. Lu Ren and the others had just been attacked by the fake Qiao Jin and were now frightened. However, when they saw Qiao Jin suddenly return to normal, as if nothing had happened, they looked at each other. Zhao Yuandu went to help Ji Mengmeng, who had fainted in the corner. Lu Xian and Tang Yiming saw Qiao Jin walk straight to the stone coffin and tentatively walked over. Chapter 688. Qiao Jin looked at the sarcophagus and narrowed his eyes. It was just a rare curse array point. She had just fallen into the array that he had set up. The two had nothing to do with each other, but they appeared in the same place. Therefore, it could be explained that this array master came later and did not know of the existence of this array master. No matter who it was, he was also locked in here. Qiao Jin sized it up for a moment. Lu Xian went forward to push the sarcophagus and said, "We can't open it at all. There isn't even an opening." This kind of unscientific method of casting made it seem like a model of a sarcophagus was built to suppress it here. Tang Yiming looked and listened for a while. Suddenly, he said, "There's something inside." He still had some eyesight. It was not easy to sense what was inside the sarcophagus. Lu Ren walked up with a pale face. He was still staring at Qiao Jin with vigilance. When he was about 8 feet away from him, he asked, "Could the array point be inside the sarcophagus?" Lu Xian said, "It's possible even if it's placed on a corpse. If we don't open the sarcophagus, we can't get the thing." Tang Yiming looked around. "It's impossible to open it. There's a restriction array set up here. Other than this array master, we only have..." Just as he finished speaking, Qiao Jin had already reached out to pinch a few red threads of the array and strung them on the sarcophagus. Rumble, the sarcophagus made a strange sound, as if it was forcefully opened by someone. There was actually an obvious crack. It was the crack of the sarcophagus. Cracks appeared on the body of the sarcophagus and the lid. The entire sarcophagus was shaking. The lid was also shaking violently. Soon, a wide crack appeared. From within the crack, a faint glimmer of light could be seen. It was as if something was emitting light from inside. In an instant, it lit up a corner of the hole. Lu Xian, who was closest to the sarcophagus, narrowed his eyes. He reached out to grab something, but a ray of light rushed out from the sarcophagus and went straight for Qiao Jin. He missed it by a hair's breadth. Qiao Jin reached out and looked at Lu Xian with a faint smile. "Didn't I say that the array point belongs to me?" Lu Xian's face was livid. Before the few people beside her could react, Qiao Jin had already taken the array point. That was fucking infuriating. Lu Ren stood at the side and looked at Zhao Yuandan in the distance. Although he was angry, he didn't do anything to snatch it. Lu Xian clenched his fists tightly and glared at Qiao Jin. In the end, he looked away and gave up. However, Tang Yiming's sight was not on Qiao Jin. He did not even pay attention to the formation point that had rushed out at the first moment. His eyes were tightly locked on the inside of the stone coffin. There was some horror in his eyes, but there was also an inexplicable infatuation, as if he had seen something extraordinary. Qiao Jin already felt that there was something special inside, and it was still alive. She took 2 steps forward, and the lid of the coffin let out a huge rumbling sound as it was smashed to the side. What appeared in front of Qiao Jin and the others was a woman in a bright red robe. She had a tasseled crown on her head. Even in today's modern times, it was a rare handicraft. What was more shocking was her beautiful and enchanting face. Her eyes were tightly closed, and her perfect lips were as red as blood. She was so alive that even her skin was porcelain white and flawless. It was as if she was just sleeping quietly, and not a dead person. Chapter 689. What is this? As array formation masters, Tang Yiming and the rest were quite knowledgeable. They had only heard of immortality from some old monsters, and they had to pay a hefty price for it. However, this was the first time they had seen an array formation master whose corpse had not decayed. No one would doubt the woman in front of them even if she said that she had just fallen asleep. Her face even had a certain seductiveness to it. It was so beautiful that it was suffocating, as if it could make people lose themselves in her beauty. Qiao Jin lowered her eyes to take a look, and a hint of interest suddenly appeared in her eyes. The main array point on her body had already been taken, but there was still another array point on this corpse. It was right at her heart. She was dead, and her heart was no longer beating. That array point just stayed there quietly. If not for Qiao Jin, no one would have discovered it. However, what interested Qiao Jin was not this, but the woman in front of her was actually gathering a kind of vitality quickly. She was about to be resurrected. She was really coming back from the dead. Anyone who came back from the dead had to pay a price, and Qiao Jin was the same. She was still wandering in the river of time for 10,000 years, but the woman in front of her was actually gathering vitality. What was the price she had to pay? The karma on her body indicated that she had already paid the price. There was no need to think about it. It was a very tragic price. So she was interested. This woman was about to be resurrected, and she wanted to take her away. However, the others did not know. The others gathered around. Qiao Jin turned around and took a look. Ji Mengmeng was still unconscious. She waved her hand, and Ji Mengmeng woke up in a daze. Seeing Zhao Yuandan's shocked expression, Qiao Jin said, "Nothing happened to her. She was just blinded by the array formation. She's fine now." Ji Mengmeng also asked in a timely manner, "What happened?" Zhao Yuandan heaved a sigh of relief. The few of them came closer and saw the woman in the stone coffin. Ji Mengmeng exclaimed and expressed her opinion first. "So beautiful. Why are all the girls in this kind of coffin so beautiful?" "Everyone," Zhao Yuandan said faintly, "usually, these are either goddesses or female ghosts. Which one do you want to see?" Lu Xian, on the other hand, had a sullen look on his face. Her body did not decay after death. She must have used a formation to exert pressure. She must be a formidable monster. We have already obtained the formation point. Let's destroy her body and leave as soon as possible. Ji Mengmeng immediately said, that's not a good idea. What if this is the ancient array master? What if we get into trouble? She's good at curses. Lu Ren glared at her. What can we do? What if an even bigger problem occurred? Or should we go back the way we came and pretend that nothing happened? Most importantly, there was nothing in the coffin except for the woman. He couldn't possibly strip her of her clothes. The formation points were also gone, and he didn't get anything. This trip could be considered a waste of time. Unexpectedly, at this moment, Xiao Jin looked at Lu Ren and said faintly, Lu Ren, do me a favor. Carry her up and I'll give you the 10 million. Lu Ren, are you fucking crazy? Not only Lu Ren, but the others also looked at Xiao Jin in horror when they heard this. Zhao Yuandan couldn't help but say, you want to carry this female corpse? This is a corpse. They had seen many dead people. It was impossible for them to carry a corpse and run. Xiao Jin sighed. Forget it then. Chapter 690. Since they weren't willing to carry it, he could only trick them into leaving first. Then he would send the coffin back. People in this era didn't even care about 10 million yuan. Lu Xian and the others stared at Xiao Jin as if they were having cramps. Who would dare to do such a thing? Now that they had obtained the formation point and dealt with the matter, they naturally had to go back and report. Originally, they didn't know how to return. But as soon as they walked out of the underground palace, a path appeared. After walking out, they appeared in front of a cave. When they had arrived, the sky had still been dark. But now, the sky was turning white. Zhao Yuandan muttered, strange. It felt like we had only been down there for half an hour. Ji Mengmeng asked why Xiao Jin had suddenly appeared in a different place from them. When they had fallen into a small path. Not long after, they had reached the underground palace. Then Xiao Jin had suddenly attacked Ji Mengmeng. That was why they had seen that scene just now. Xiao Jin naturally didn't say that he had seen something else. He only said, your eyes are playing tricks on you. I've always been by your side. When she had appeared, Lu Ren had been glaring at her. They hadn't been here for that long. Lu Ren still looked at Xiao Jin doubtfully. Xiao Jin now understood that other than Tang Yiming and Lu Xian, the other formation masters were just formation masters. Just like Duan Nianru. Even if they were formation masters, it didn't mean that they were all scheming and astute. They just happened to have the ability of formation masters. In fact, they didn't even know what some basic formations were. As expected, formation masters were incomparably rare. Even if they gathered together, they were completely useless. If Xiao Jin hadn't come today, they would have all died. As formation masters, they were usually flattered. They had seen too little. It was no wonder Xiao Jin had obtained the formation point. Other than Lu Xian and Tang Yiming, the others hadn't said a word. Lu Ren only hated Xiao Jin for taking it. Did they know what the formation point was used for? Not necessarily. Just as Xiao Jin was about to speak, he suddenly felt something. She glanced into the forest and suddenly said, you guys go first, I'll catch up later. Lu Ren said, if you take the array points, you should at least go back and report it to us. Do you want to keep it for yourself? Xiao Jin glanced at him. This array point was originally mine to take. Do you have a problem with that? Lu Ren, Lu Xian and the others were full of anger. When they left, they glanced at Xiao Jin and warned him, you've taken the array point, but you'd better not touch the female corpse inside. Otherwise, you'll be the one to suffer." He waved his hand and left. Zhao Yuandan and the others glanced at him and could only choose to follow him. Ji Mengmeng only urged, "Sister Qiao Jin, hurry up." After they left, Qiao Jin walked in a direction. Before he took 2 steps, Song Yanqing's figure slowly walked out of the forest. He was wearing a coat and looked like an elegant gentleman. However, he didn't look well. And he didn't know how long he had been there. Qiao Jin frowned and said, "You directly teleported here." Song Yanqing nodded. When he saw Qiao Jin, he felt a lot more at ease. He stepped forward and grabbed Qiao Jin's arm. "I heard you call me." "Call you?" Qiao Jin suddenly remembered that when he was in the cave, he did call Song Yanqing. Song Yanqing felt it, oh. Chapter 691. Qiao Jin found it strange that they were so far away from each other. In her mind, the memory might be related to Song Yanqing, and it became closer. Why was Song Yanqing so sensitive to her? However, this was not a good place to talk. Qiao Jin said, "Let's go back and talk. Wait for me to make a call first." Song Yanqing nodded. She lowered her eyes slightly and saw Qiao Jin's wrist. Fortunately, it seemed that nothing had happened. Qiao Jin took Song Yanqing back first. They went in the opposite direction from Ji Mengmeng and the others, mainly because they couldn't see Song Yanqing coming. He found a place with some signal and gave Meng Qingyu a call. Meng Qingyu was a little surprised when she received the call. "Qiao Jin." Qiao Jin said gently, "Meng Qingyu, I need you to do me a favor." "Is young Qiulu the only one at home now?" Meng Qingyu said, "It's okay. Just tell me. I'll help you if I can." "Young Qiulu is not at home now. Sister Hiyao has something to do and has to go to another city. She has nothing to do, so she was called by Sister Hiyao to take care of the child. There's no one at home now." Hiyao was still taking care of Lan Xiaoni. Now that young Qiulu was taking care of her, she had found something to do. Qiao Jin said, "It's good that there's no one at home. I need to put something in it, but it's a little abrupt. If you don't want to, forget it." Meng Qingyu didn't hesitate. "Put it. Put anything. Is it a delivery?" Qiao Jin said, "A coffin. There's a female corpse in the coffin." Song Yanqing suddenly looked up. Meng Qingyu, even though her temperament had already reached a higher level, she still felt as if she had received a huge blow when she heard this sentence. She couldn't help but lower her voice. "Did you kill someone?" He seriously suspected that Qiao Jin wanted to destroy the evidence. Qiao Jin chuckled. "Of course not. This female corpse is an ancient person. She is very far away from us and can be resurrected at any time. I need to put her in a safe place where I can control her." Meng Qingyu now felt that following Qiao Jin was really an eye-opener. She sucked in a breath of cold air. It can be resurrected. Why was the operation so mysterious now? Qiao Jin said, "Yes, and it should be soon." She even suspected that the array point in her heart was one of the 9 array points. It seemed that the fact that the formation points all fell on the hearts of living people was going to be overturned. Meng Qingyu hesitated for a moment before agreeing. "It's fine. You can let it go. I won't go back either. I'll tell young Qiulu not to go back for the time being." Qiao Jin thought for a moment. "She's pretty." Meng Qingyu, "Boss, this wasn't a matter of whether she was pretty or not. The other party was a female corpse." However, Song Yanqing seemed to be amused. He pursed his lips into a smile and looked at Qiao Jin with a slightly amused expression. Since Meng Qingyu had agreed, Qiao Jin was much more direct. She used the array formation to teleport the stone coffin directly to Meng Qingyu's house in the imperial capital thousands of miles away. Even if the people from the spirit group went back to investigate, they wouldn't be able to find the underground palace. Once the coffin disappeared, the entire mountain range shook slightly. When they came back again, they couldn't find any trace of it. After hanging up, she looked at Song Yanqing and said in a relaxed tone, "Let's go. After this matter is settled, I'll tell you something interesting." Song Yanqing nodded. He didn't ask anything. In any case, Qiao Jin would tell him anyway. He felt that she must have discovered something this time. Chapter 692. Qiao Jin left with Song Yanqing. The road in the jungle was not easy to walk on. In addition, Song Yanqing had suddenly appeared. Qiao Jin directly teleported him to the city. Soon, they found a place to rest in a room. Fortunately, Song Yanqing had prepared an ID card before they came. After entering the hotel room, Song Yanqing sat on the sofa to rest. At this time, his face was a little pale. It was obvious to the naked eye that his complexion was not good. Qiao Jin said, "Your body can't withstand such a long-distance teleportation." His ability was now slowly growing. Even if his progress was rapid, it was not like this. Song Yanqing opened his eyes and looked at him deeply. His tone was very soft. "I heard you call me." He was worried, so he came directly. In addition, he could not reach him on the phone. Qiao Jin raised his eyebrows. "You heard me call you." Such a long distance meant that it was abnormal. Song Yanqing nodded. "Yes, it was a bit like an auditory hallucination, but I don't think I heard wrong." He saw Qiao Jin's expression and said directly, "You really called me, didn't you?" Seeing that he had guessed it, Qiao Jin nodded. "So I feel that something is wrong." Qiao Jin pursed his lips and sat beside Song Yanqing. It was so far away. "Before you came, you did not dream that this matter was related to you. But you heard me call you." "I followed them and did find the mausoleum of an ancient array master. The sarcophagus I mentioned just now was that array master's. The woman was a female corpse, but now she is going to be resurrected. Of course, this is not the key problem. The key is that there was an array I set up in the place where she was. I heard your voice in the array." Song Yanqing listened attentively and frowned when he heard that. "You heard my voice. What was it?" It was possible that something else was luring her. But with her ability, such a thing could not happen. It was very natural. It was a very normal question, as if he was right beside her. Only when she turned her head did she realize that there was no Song Yanqing beside her. Qiao Jin's eyes swept across his face. "There's something I didn't say. I actually forgot some things, but these things are very far away. In the memories I lost, there seems to be something about your existence." But she was very sure that she should not have met the modern Song Yanqing. After she woke up, her memories of the 20 years in the modern world were clear. There was not a single scene where Song Yanqing appeared. "About me?" Song Yanqing said in a low voice. He understood what Qiao Jin was implying and understood that Qiao Jin was probably not referring to the current period of time. He knew very well that he had never met Qiao Jin when he was young. She suddenly stretched out her hand. Her slender fingertips were a little cold. She touched Song Yanqing's eyebrows and said in a thoughtful tone, "Is it reincarnation?" Reincarnation was actually a rather vague thing. Once a person died, all the karma would be cut off cleanly. Even she could not tell what a person's previous life was. There was no example to prove it. Then reincarnation was just a fake thing. Her example was a bit like reincarnation, but it was not. Only Song Yanqing didn't have any shadow at all, but it was strange. Unless, like Xiao Jin, he was resurrected through a special channel. But he forgot. Chapter 693. Song Yanqing also understood the meaning in her words and couldn't help but laugh. Do you think that I'm the same as you? Xiao Jin shook his head. Right now, it's just a guess. You don't have any memories, so I can only guess. If you are related to me, then it's very regretful, because I don't even know who you are. She didn't remember if there was a person called Song Yanqing in her memories. Song Yanqing was also a pure modern person. Even if there was a problem, it was impossible for the current her to know. I'm not the shadow of anyone in your memories. Song Yanqing suddenly grabbed Xiao Jin's wrist. His pitch-black eyes looked at Xiao Jin and he said seriously, I'm just Song Yanqing. Of course I know. Xiao Jin took his hand back and said, You're Song Yanqing. I won't mistake you for anyone else. It's just that right now, things are a bit strange. Song Yanqing's expression relaxed and his eyes were still as gentle as ever. You sense danger. Xiao Jin shook his head. There's no danger. It was just that there were a few more unsolved mysteries. Right now, that sarcophagus has already been moved out by me. It's also possible that she just built a mausoleum in my formation. It's a coincidence, but it's not a coincidence that she has an extra formation point on her body. Things were always progressing step by step. She would get an answer sooner or later. Song Yanqing couldn't help but ask, You found another formation point? Xiao Jin nodded. That female corpse's heart is the same as Meng Qingyu and Yang Qiulu's. They both have a formation point. At the moment, this formation point is completely useless to them, but it can be used to suppress them. Xiao Jin had told Song Yanqing about the 9 formation points. Now, Song Yanqing could understand. He found the 3rd one so quickly. His speed was quite fast. Song Yanqing asked, Can she come back to life? Xiao Jin nodded. Yes. Song Yanqing was a little curious. I'll go back with you to see her. Xiao Jin, sure. Not long after she talked to Song Yanqing, she received a call from Ji Mengmeng. Sister Xiao Jin, where are you? Xiao Jin said, I've already returned to the hotel. You guys can go back first. I'll be back soon. Ji Mengmeng was a little embarrassed. Oh, Xiao Jin could tell that she was implying something, so she said, I'll give you an explanation when I get back. As for what kind of explanation it was, that was just a superficial explanation. Ji Mengmeng, okay. Although they were array masters, there was still a huge gap between them. She, Zhao Yuandan, and the others were too young to understand many things about array masters. This time, they were brought here purely because they were forced to do something beyond their abilities. Xiao Jin could already tell. If such a group of people could challenge the ancient array master's mausoleum, the future of the spirit group was indeed bleak. How should he put it? The standard of spiritual readers nowadays was getting worse with each generation. After hanging up the phone, Lu Ren was still grumbling on the other side. We didn't feel like we were in any danger. We didn't even see the array. It was all broken by that woman. I now suspect that this is a trap, just to lure us in. Lu Xian could not help but say, Shut up. If she wanted to kill you, with your vigilance, you would have died 8 times over. That mausoleum of array masters is really not that easy to break into. She solved it so easily. Doesn't that make you think of something else? That was, Xiao Jin was even more terrifying than the ancient array masters. Although a dead array master could not compare to a living one, how could modern people understand the ancient array masters from thousands of years ago? Chapter 694. Xiao Jin didn't take it seriously at all. It was enough to see how dangerous she was. So Lu Xian just looked a little unwilling when the array point was taken, but he didn't dare to say anything. Lu Xian's position in the spirit group was different. After being scolded by him, Lu Ren still stopped. He only said resentfully, "Isn't it because she took advantage of us, Tang Yiming? I now suspect that the destruction of the Feng family was not an accident." He was usually a man of few words. His sudden words made Lu Xian look over. Lu Xian and Tang Yiming both had a deep look in their eyes. They were obviously thinking the same thing. It wasn't an accident. Lu Ren waved his hand and said, "Didn't they say it was done by someone? Even if it's their weakness, they have to be capable." Zhao Yuandan couldn't listen anymore. With the background of the Feng family in the capital, who dares to touch them? The mastermind behind this incident didn't even leave a trace. It was terrifying. Ji Mengmeng didn't say anything. Lu Xian said, "After we go back this time, just answer the questions truthfully. As for the rest, keep quiet." That was something Qiao Jin would deal with. If something went wrong here, who knew what would happen? Zhao Yuandan thought for a while and suddenly said, "Is that female corpse the ancient array master?" Everyone was silent for a while. Ji Mengmeng guessed, "It seems like it." Didn't Qiao Jin want to take her away at that time? He even wanted to take the corpse away. Zhao Yuandan gasped, "He is really a ruthless person." Several people were discussing here. On the other side, Qiao Jin also returned to the capital with Song Yanqing. They said they were going to deal with the matter, and it was done quickly. 10 million yuan was too easy to get. Of course, she said that she wouldn't take the money after taking the array point, so she didn't ask the spirit group for the money. She only told Zhongli Peining what happened. Zhongli Peining was very smart. After listening to the whole analysis, she didn't ask any unnecessary nonsense. She only asked, "That female corpse is the array master. Is she dead?" Qiao Jin smiled and said, "Of course he's dead. Do you think that a formation master who lived until now didn't have to pay a price?" Zhongli Peining smiled embarrassedly. "Are you holding the curse array points?" Qiao Jin nodded. "Yes." Zhongli Peining nodded, as if she didn't want to ask about other information. Qiao Jin's interest was piqued. "Don't you want to know more? I'm sure you guys will be full of questions now." Just like that day when the spirit group was monitoring her, they even suspected that Qiao Jin was a dangerous person. Zhongli Peining smiled embarrassedly. "To be honest, we had to monitor you because of the rules, but now we don't think it's necessary." This matter was also a test. Qiao Jin didn't feel any pressure at all. They weren't stupid. The person in front of them was a big boss through and through. Why would he need others to control him? After hesitating for a moment, Zhongli Peining said, "I know some things are redundant, but I still have to say it. Our spirit group itself isn't under the jurisdiction of ordinary people, but we also have to maintain social stability and rely on the country. We have always been independent, so except for a few families, everything is basically decided internally by the spirit group. Qiao Jin, I think you are a person who knows how to respect life, so don't do things like the Feng family." The Feng family had infiltrated the spirit group from the beginning, and they hid it too well. The spirit group couldn't find any substantial evidence. Chapter 695. If one day they found out that Qiao Jin had done something similar, with her ability, she would definitely be classified as a terrorist. Modern technology might not be able to deal with Qiao Jin, but spiritual readers were also ordinary humans. They could also grow old, get sick, and die. At that time, it would not only be the spirit group who would find out that something was wrong, but also the country. Even if they had to make a lot of sacrifices, they would probably do anything to make Qiao Jin disappear. Now that Xiao Jin had not made any moves, and she was very strong, the spirit group would naturally not cause any trouble. Xiao Jin was a little excited and did not care about Zhongli Peining's words. She knew that she was just reminding her out of kindness. This proved that the current spirit group was powerless to control Xiao Jin. As long as she did not want to destroy the world, everyone could talk. You don't have to worry about this. Xiao Jin smiled and said, I am not interested in anyone. As long as they did not provoke her, no matter if they were spiritual readers or ordinary people, they were all the same in her eyes. When Zhongli Peining heard her words, she also felt a little relieved. She smiled and said, then I will go back and report first. You can look for me in the future if you need anything. Xiao Jin, go. Zhongli Peining was going back to the organization. She and Song Yanqing were going to see the female corpse. Song Yanqing returned to the capital and went back to the Song family first. He disappeared early in the morning, scaring Dan out of his wits. When he returned, Dan was in the living room enduring Song Shirin's anger. He was almost crying for his father and mother. When he saw Song Yanqing, he seemed to be about to cry. Young master, why did you go to Nanjiang? They found out that Song Yanqing boarded the plane back to the capital from Nanjiang, but how did he get there? When did he go? Dan wondered if he was a little delirious. Song Yanqing coughed softly. Last night, you fell asleep. I didn't wake you. Dan, he was so vigilant, but he didn't hear the young master's voice. Was the young master so scary now? Song Yanqing told Dan and went to see his father. No one knew what he said. In short, he came out in 10 minutes, and Song Shirin did not pursue it. When he came out, Song Yanqing called Dan. Send me to pick Xiao Jin. Yi muttered, why is he with Miss Xiao every day? Even if he's in a relationship, he doesn't need to be so intimate. Isn't the company busy? When he received Xiao Jin, Song Yanqing asked her, everything settled? Because Dan was an outsider, Xiao Jin and Song Yanqing didn't say anything. But he suddenly thought of something and said, I happen to have time. I've put off work today. How about I go to the Mu family with you tonight? Xiao Jin didn't object at all and said naturally, okay. She wanted to go back to school, but the Ling group had helped her apply for leave. It was better to go back to the Mu family. An interested smile appeared on Song Yanqing's lips. Do old Master Mu and Uncle have anything they like? Does Auntie have any hobbies? She had to find the right medicine. After all, it was her first time visiting. She had to prepare a good gift. In the end, Xiao Jin failed. She thought carefully. After 3 seconds of silence, she said, I don't know about Jinming. Fei Fei likes to play mahjong. Song Yanqing. Chapter 696. Song Yanqing was a little amused. Then I'll buy a few gifts. Xiao Jin said sincerely, they will like whatever you buy. With Song Yanqing's status, the gifts would not be too low, and the Mu family would not hate Song Yanqing. That being said, Song Yanqing winked at Dan, and Dan understood. Miss Xiao did not provide any information, so it was very easy for Dan to go out and ask around in the market. For them, it was not difficult to do these things. Young Master and Miss Xiao went to deal with things, and he could help Young Master choose the gifts. The car stopped downstairs in Meng Qingyu's neighborhood. It was broad daylight, and there were not many people downstairs. The car was not conspicuous nearby, but when Song Yanqing and Xiao Jin got out of the car, they attracted a lot of attention. They were used to this kind of attention, and walked toward Meng Qingyu's house in the neighborhood. Although Meng Qingyu did not give them the key, it was too easy for Xiao Jin to enter the house. As soon as they entered, they saw the square stone coffin in the living room. The coffin lid was lifted, which meant that the stone coffin was now open. They only needed to take 2 steps forward to see the woman lying in the stone coffin. This scene was really challenging the limits of people's endurance. Meng Qingyu and Yang Qiulu had made the right choice not to come back. Song Yanqing was a little puzzled. Why did you put her here? If you need a safe and hidden place, I can provide it. Yang Qiulu and Meng Qingyu are both holders of the array points. I put her here to see if she will have any conflict with the 2 of them. When Meng Qingyu saw Yang Qiulu, his heart beat so fast that Yang Qiulu almost directly awakened. Song Yanqing nodded to show that he understood, and walked over with Qiao Jin. This stunning woman was still lying in the stone coffin, wearing a black tasseled crown and a red robe, but it did not look like a wedding dress. 4,000 years ago, human civilization had just begun to develop. Logically speaking, people should not have dressed like this. However, Qiao Jin himself had existed for tens of thousands of years. Naturally, he knew that some things had simply been buried over time. When Song Yanqing saw the woman in front of him, his dark pupils suddenly darkened. An image suddenly appeared in his mind. There were thousands of people kneeling on the ground. The wind swept up thousands of miles of yellow sand. They all knelt on the ground with solemn and dignified expressions. High Priest. High Priest. With my life, with my blood, I offer it to the heavens. I hope that the High Priest will recover after 1,000 years and revive Qianzang. With my life, with my blood, I offer it to the heavens. I hope that the High Priest will recover after 1,000 years and revive Qianzang. Boundless, solemn and even sorrowful. One by one, there were men and women, and there were even young and old. They knelt on the ground and prayed to the heavens. Then, their necks were slit. Bright red-hot blood, like the most gorgeous and scorching rose, bloomed on the yellow sand. The yellow sand in the sky wailed, like the mournful wails of malicious spirits. In an instant, it engulfed the entire earth. The wind swept up the yellow sand, instantly enveloping all the shadows. All of this was buried under the yellow sand. This scene on the surface of the lake only lasted for a short 2 seconds. Song Yanqing frowned slightly and muttered, High Priest. Was this the past he saw? Qiao Jin instantly looked at him. What did you see? A spiritualist could see the past and know the future. This was a talent that could not be compared. Chapter 697. Song Yanqing looked at Qiao Jin and told her about the scene just now. Qiao Jin thought, 4,000 years ago, this woman was a high priest. Song Yanqing asked her, using other people's lives in exchange for her own resurrection, is this theoretically feasible? Of course it's feasible. Qiao Jin said, as long as there is an array, the Feng family can borrow luck with life. This kind of 1,000 people's lives in exchange for the resurrection of a high priest, and it's voluntary. This is the first time I have seen this. This resurrected woman will have a big problem. Qianzang. Song Yanqing, I think if historians know about it, they will have a headache. Qiao Jin suddenly said, it's possible that she has existed for more than 4,000 years. In her era, the concept of a country had already begun, but all traces of what happened were covered up. Song Yanqing pondered for a moment and said, it's possible. If a country called Qianzang existed 4,000 years ago, then there will be no trace of it. It should be before this. Human civilization has records from 5,000 years ago. It might be even longer ago, but it was covered up by something. After all, if the spiritual psyche master existed, it was enough to cause a lot of things that modern society couldn't understand. Qiao Jin raised her eyebrows. Song Yanqing guessed correctly. She didn't say that she came from 10,000 years ago. The current problem was this woman called the High Priest. She was extremely beautiful. Now that she was lying quietly in the coffin, she looked very lifelike. If she was in the entertainment industry, any actress would be overshadowed by her bright face. Her vitality was getting stronger and stronger. In less than a week, she would be resurrected. At that time, only this woman's resurrection could give an answer. Xiao Jin didn't care about the secrets of this woman herself. She just wanted to know what the third array point represented in her body. She was a curse-type array master when she was alive, and she was resurrected by 1,000 people's blood sacrifice. Her strength was definitely not comparable to modern people. If Xiao Jin didn't exist, she might not know when she would wake up. It was obvious that the underground palace was passive, which was why there were signs of resurrection. Although she was beautiful, Song Yanqing lost interest after looking at her and confirming that she couldn't get more information. It was only because she was a person from 1,000 years ago that she had some interest. The most interested person might be the historian. Song Yanqing remembered that Xiao Jin said that she heard his voice in the cave, and he was still thinking about it. After looking at this woman, they left again. When he went downstairs, Dan stepped forward and said, "Young master, the things you need have been bought. It will be delivered in about an hour or two. Do you need to wait a little longer?" He also told Xiao Fei so that she could be mentally prepared. However, before it was evening, he received a call from Xiao Fei. Xiao Fei on the phone was furious. "Jean, are you in class now?" Mom encountered something infuriating. Xiao Jin was a little surprised. "What's wrong with you?" Xiao Fei said angrily, "Didn't I tell you that your Uncle Mu used to have a confidant? She used to annoy me. Later, your Uncle Mu ignored her. Now that she is back, she even asked Uncle Mu to pick her up. Uncle Mu didn't pick her up. Now, she broke into our house and made things difficult for Grandpa Mu. She is making me angry. What a vixen." Xiao Fei was so angry. Chapter 698. After listening to Xiao Fei's complaints, Xiao Jin pondered for a moment and said, "Then I'll come back right away. I'm just outside the school right now." Xiao Fei was so busy with her own matters that she didn't even think about why Xiao Jin was outside. She quickly said, Okay, come back quickly and help your mother. She also brought her daughter over and tried to humiliate you." "Xiao Jin, who is she trying to humiliate?" Xiao Jin hung up the phone, looked at Song Yanqing and whispered, "I have to go back first. Do you want to come with me or come over tonight?" "Fei Fei asked me to go back. She said that there are strangers at home and something happened." Song Yanqing was next to him and vaguely heard a little bit of the conversation. He thought it was a little funny. "Wait for another 10 minutes. I'll go back with you, okay?" Xiao Jin nodded, "Okay." Song Yanqing was waiting for a Zai to ask someone to buy something. He also looked at the things and they were indeed suitable gifts. After the gifts were sent over, he and Xiao Jin went to the Mu house together. Xiao Fei was a little restless in the living room. Naive and sweet people also have their own sensitive senses. When they were young, they had a quarrel with Bai Lianhua in front of them. Now that they are older, they can no longer compete with each other. Bai Lianhua is called Li Sikan and the daughter she brought is called Erin. She is the child of a rich businessman from abroad. In all fairness, Li Sikan is quite good. When she was young, she was a famous rich beauty. She was used to putting on airs. At least in the eyes of others, she was a perfect rich beauty. If it weren't for the private argument between Xiao Fei and Li Sikan, she would also be confused by Li Sikan's performance. The current Li Sikan is a very fashionable and delicate lady. Like Xiao Fei, she is very well maintained. She is beautiful and generous. In front of her, her daughter is somewhat overshadowed. Li Saikin's father and Mu Xiangshan were partners. Although he went abroad early, Li Sikan and Mu Jinming were childhood sweethearts and had a good relationship. If it wasn't for the fact that Mu Jinming had no interest in her, who knew who Madame Mu would be now? The only reason Xiao Fei could smile now was because of her good attitude. At least on the surface, Li Sikan was quite good. Even Mu Xiangshan didn't think there was anything wrong with her. Only Xiao Fei had quarreled with her in private. At this time, he completely understood Li Saikin's attitude. She had a good relationship with her husband now. It was just that she came back to vomit Xiao Fei. She called Mu Jinming. In the end, when Mu Jinming called home, it was Xiao Fei who went to the gate to pick him up. On the way there, the two of them had already mocked and ridiculed each other. Both of them had a successful family business and had both children. However, Li Saikin's son was working abroad and had not returned. This time, Li Sikan had brought her daughter, so this battle could be considered a draw. While chatting, they began to talk about their daughter. Li Sikan didn't come back for a long time, so she knew that Xiao Fei had a daughter. Curious, she stepped on Xiao Fei's sore spot. Xiao Jin was once framed for taking drugs. This made Xiao Fei very angry. Now, she was pretending to talk about small talk in front of Mu Xiangshan. Women don't like each other. At least, that's how Xiao Fei felt. She learned to smile in social interactions while calculating in her heart how long it would take for Xiao Jin to come back. My daughter is much prettier than your daughter. She will blind your dog eyes. She thought angrily in her heart. Oh. Chapter 699. Li Saikin's appearance was bright and generous. She was wearing a lake green cheongsam with a knitted shawl on her shoulders. Her short hair was permed into big waves. She had the flavor of a woman from the era. Her daughter sat beside her cautiously and talked to Mu Xiangshan. When the servant's voice came from outside, Xiao Fei stood up excitedly. Xiao Jin's shadow appeared. More importantly, she brought Song Yanqing with her. Xiao Fei was a little shocked. Why was Lord Song here? When Xiao Jin brought Song Yanqing in, Song Yanqing called out gently from afar. Grandpa Mu, Aunt Xiao. Mu Xiangshan saw Song Yanqing and raised his eyebrows. Yanqing, you're here. His tone was amiable. The smile on Li Saikin's face slowly faded when he saw Song Yanqing. Who was this young master? With a single glance, one could tell that he was an extraordinary talent. As for the girl beside him, sure enough, Xiao Fei smiled and said, Jin, why did you bring Lord Song back? Li Saikin's daughter was younger than Xiao Jin. When she saw Song Yanqing, her eyes were filled with unconcealable amazement. However, there was still a hint of restraint in her eyes, but she refused to look away from Song Yanqing. Let me introduce you. Xiao Fei pointed at Li Sikan with a smile. This is Jinming's good friend, Aunt Li Sikan. Xiao Jin nodded. Song Yanqing said, hello. He didn't call anyone, but his tone was polite enough. Li Sikan looked at Song Yanqing and then at Xiao Jin. She suddenly felt a little suffocated. Xiao Fei showed off without a trace. Miss Li, this is my daughter, Xiao Jin. This is her boyfriend, Song Yanqing. Song Yanqing's smile softened. He looked at Xiao Fei and said, Aunt Xiao, I'm here to formally visit you. This is a little gift. He handed the things in his hand to Xiao Fei. Xiao Fei was a little surprised. You just came to visit. Why did you bring a gift? Mu Xiangshan also had a gift. Xiao Jin handed it to him. This is from Song Yanqing. Mu Xiangshan took it and didn't rush to open it. He raised his chin slightly. Sit down first. Let's have dinner here. It just so happens that Si-chan is back, and the house is lively. Song Yanqing, okay. Xiao Jin didn't object. Xiao Fei took Song Yanqing's gift. Li Sikan looked at Xiao Jin and Song Yanqing. After a while, she smiled. Hello, Xiao Jin and Song Yanqing, right? I didn't expect Xiao Fei's daughter to be so big after so many years. She looked at Xiao Jin and sized her up. There seemed to be a trace of disbelief in her eyes. Xiao Fei raised such a daughter. She kept these words in her heart and introduced her daughter, Erin, at the same time. Erin looked at the two and greeted them carefully. Although she had been paying attention to Song Yanqing, when she heard that he was Xiao Jin's boyfriend, her gaze couldn't be too warm. She looked away, but still looked a little shy. She didn't look like a child raised abroad. Later, Xiao Fei came downstairs. They sat in the living room downstairs and talked about the past. Now that Xiao Jin was back, Xiao Fei was more confident. He spoke to Li Sikan more firmly. The two talked about the past. Xiao Jin heard a lot about Xiao Fei and Mu Zhenming. Chapter 700. If one had to describe it, it would be, what a mess. Li Sikan used to be Mu Zhenming's childhood sweetheart. She worked with Mu Zhenming for a while when they were young. Later, Mu Zhenming and Xiao Fei got married, and she went abroad after attending the wedding. Their eldest son was slightly younger than Mu Qizhi, and their daughter was even younger than Xiao Jin. It was obvious that she was doing well now. She seemed to be a little curious about Song Yanqing and asked several questions. In the end, Xiao Jin was sure that Li Sikan didn't know who Song Yanqing was. In the past, the Mu family didn't have the ability to connect with the Song Yanqing, so it wasn't strange that Li Sikan didn't know who Song Yanqing was. Not long after, Mu Zhenming called and said that he was on his way home. Li Sikan volunteered that she would cook for him tonight and said with a smile, "Uncle, you haven't eaten my cooking for a long time, right?" Li Sikan was young, but she didn't act like a rich young lady. She even learned cooking for Mu Zhenming. She was talented, but it was a pity that she didn't fall in love. Xiao Fei's face turned green. Although she raised Xiao Jin and knew how to cook some basic dishes, she didn't know how to cook difficult dishes, especially now that she was pampered in the Mu family. How could she remember how to cook? Mu Xiangshan raised his eyebrows, "But you're a guest. How can you cook?" "So what?" Li Sikan ran her fingers through her hair, "We're family." Xiao Fei, this shameless woman. She was furious. Seeing that Li Sikan had already entered the kitchen, she said shamelessly, "I'll help too." Mu Xiangshan glared at her, "Can you cook?" Xiao Fei said angrily, "I'll help. I can eat." Mu Xiangshan, after the two of them went in, the few people left in the living room looked at each other. Song Yanqing felt that Li Sikan and Xiao Fei were too strange. He pondered for a moment and confirmed that it was not good for him to get involved in this matter, so he did not say anything. Mu Xiangshan was worried that Erin would be bored, so he asked Erin, "Erin, do you know how to play chess? Can you play with Grandpa for a while?" Erin nodded and said cautiously, "I've been with my mother." Mu Xiangshan smiled. "That's good." He called for someone to bring over Chinese chess and asked Erin to play with him. He then said to Xiao Jin and Song Yanqing, "You two stay at the side and learn a little." Xiao Jin, forget about Xiao Jin, but Mu Xiangshan definitely knew how to play Song Yanqing. He didn't say anything and just sat beside Xiao Jin, watching Mu Xiangshan and Erin play chess with great interest. Xiao Jin heard the argument between Xiao Fei and Li Sikan in the kitchen, but the content made her a little surprised. Xiao Fei followed Li Sikan into the kitchen and said, "Do you know what you're doing right now?" Li Sikan said slowly, "Green tea bitch." "TSK, what do you know?" "I'm much better than a green tea bitch." Xiao Fei was shocked. "You still have the cheek. You came back to annoy me, didn't you?" Li Sikan glanced at her disdainfully. "Yeah, I saw that you were living too comfortably, so I came back to make things difficult for you." "Why did you come in when I'm cooking?" "Why, are you afraid that I'll poison you?" Xiao Fei said confidently, "I came in to help." "Why? Can't I?" Li Sikan, "Tisk, you're so virtuous. Have you been cooking for Zhenming all these years? How can you show your culinary skills to others? You're still calling him Zhenming. Are you so unreserved at your age?" Chapter 701. Li Sikan rolled her eyes at Xiao Fei. She took out the frozen meat from the fridge and defrosted it. As for the other vegetables, she skillfully washed and cut them. Xiao Fei could only watch from the side. When Li Sikan was preparing to stew, she threw a few pieces of vegetables to Xiao Fei. When she saw Xiao Fei chopping vegetables as if he was chopping people, she said, "I just came back. Do you have to be so worried that your precious husband will like me? He didn't like me back then. Do you think he will like me now?" "I don't think so." Xiao Fei glanced at Li Sikan. "I'm not worried about you and Zhenming. It's just that you came back and said something about Old Master. It's not like you don't know that Old Master has a problem with me. You have ulterior motives." Li Sikan sneered. "If I could do it, would you have been able to marry into the family back then?" Xiao Fei asked, "What do you mean?" Li Sikan rolled her eyes. "That unfilial son chased his father out of the country for you. Do you think it's a big deal for me to do that?" Xiao Fei said, "You're right, but you can't bite the hand that feeds you." She held the kitchen knife and waved it as she spoke. "I haven't told anyone about you all these years." Li Sikan dodged to the side. "Be careful. This is a kitchen knife. If anything happens to me, I'll be hospitalized and you'll go to jail. Think about it carefully." Xiao Fei resentfully put the knife away. Li Sikan saw her like this and snorted. "Do I need you to tell me that? I've already found someone to cripple that bastard. He can forget about having children in this lifetime." Xiao Fei heard this and gasped. He looked at her in disbelief. "You're so vicious." Li Sikan laughed. "You have the cheek to say that. You beat him up and sent him to the hospital with a concussion. I paid for the money." Xiao Fei's face turned red. "What can I do? I'm just a weak woman. I can't beat him, so I can only open his head. If I was a little later, you wouldn't be here. Why don't you know how to be grateful?" Li Sikan glared at her. The two of them still had some strange things that they didn't say. They had indeed had a catfight before. Anyway, the two of them didn't like each other. After all, Li Sikan really liked Mu Zhenming back then. Later, when she found out that Mu Zhenming didn't like her, she felt a little frustrated and found Xiao Fei an eyesore. She felt that Xiao Fei was purely an idiot with no IQ. She was useless except for crying. How could she be worthy of Mu Zhenming? It was precisely because of this that Li Sikan was in a bad mood after her defeat. She was a fair, rich, and beautiful woman who did not lack partners, so she casually picked one to date. Who knew that he was blind at that time? Later on, Li Sikan felt that her ex-boyfriend was a little too much and decided to break up with him. Who would have thought that her ex-boyfriend would become a terrorist? Oh. He accused Li Sikan of playing with his feelings and insisted that Li Sikan compensate him millions of dollars in damages. Li Sikan scolded him for being crazy. Of course, she was unwilling. In the end, they got into an argument. Not only did her ex-boyfriend want to rape her, he even wanted to kill her. People who were agitated to the point of losing their rationality. At that time, if it wasn't for Xiao Fei, who was passing by, who swung a brick in shock and broke his head, Li Sikan might have died. Xiao Fei hit him until he had a concussion and cried miserably. Later on, he was sent to the hospital. It was Li Sikan who used her connections to settle the matter. She paid for the scumbag's treatment, but after he was released, she didn't let him have an easy time. She was the kind of person who refused to be taken advantage of. Chapter 702. After the incident, Li Sikan asked Xiao Fei not to tell anyone about it. Xiao Fei was scared to death that he had hit someone, so of course, he would not tell anyone about it. This incident became a secret between the two of them. They had not seen each other for many years. After all, they were former love rivals, so Xiao Fei still kept an eye on him. It was said that Li Sikan was doing well abroad. Anyway, she occasionally heard Grandpa Li mention it. Li Sikan said, "I think you are doing well. You are not a good person, but your child is quite good. You must have inherited Mu Jinming's genes. If you had inherited them, you would be finished." Xiao Fei was furious. "What do you mean by that? Jean is not my biological child yet. Look at how well I have raised her." Li Sikan said, "Ha, I heard that she took drugs a while ago." "That is a misunderstanding." "A misunderstanding?" Xiao Fei and Li Sikan were arguing in the kitchen, but Xiao Jin heard it clearly. She did not expect that the two of them would have such a relationship. She immediately smiled. Song Yanqing saw it and asked her softly, "What are you smiling about?" While they were talking, Li Sikan's daughter, Erin, looked over and saw Song Yanqing talking to Xiao Jin gently. She was a little envious. Xiao Jin said slowly, "Nothing. I just thought of something interesting." They watched Grandpa Li and Erin play chess in the living room. After a while, Mu Jinming came back. When Mu Jinming returned, he naturally exchanged some pleasantries. After all, Mu Jinming hadn't seen Li Sikan for many years. In any case, they were old friends. After asking about Erin's well-being for a while, Xiao Fei and Li Sikan began to serve the dishes one after another in the kitchen. Musichu was in school, so he did not come back for the time being. When the dishes were served, Mu Xiangshan first glanced at them and then asked Xiao Fei, "Which one did you make?" Xiao Fei said cleverly, "I made all of them." Mu Xiangshan was speechless. After that, he didn't even dare to eat another dish. Li Sikan came out of the kitchen with a plate of dishes with a smile on her face. Her elegant appearance made it hard to tell that she had been busy in the kitchen for a while. She carried the dishes out with a smile on her face. "Uncle Mu, Jinming, come and have a taste. I haven't cooked for a long time. I don't know if my culinary skills have deteriorated." Xiao Fei, she snorted sourly. It had to be said that Li Sikan's cooking skills were not bad. At least, Xiao Jin felt that there was nothing wrong with it. She brought Song Yanqing here and was also the focus of everyone at the table. From time to time, she would say a few words to Song Yanqing. Song Yanqing's table manners were elegant and refined. From time to time, he would respond to Mu Xiangshan and Mu Jinming's conversation. Both the guests and the host enjoyed the meal to their heart's content. Li Sikan didn't use words to provoke Xiao Fei. Instead, she let Xiao Fei hear it. She came back this time for something. She had a project that was related to the Mu family's company, so this time, she came back to deal with this matter and also to visit an old friend. Ever since her parents passed away, she rarely returned to the country. There was nothing worth remembering here. This time, she would only stay for 3 days. Mu Xiangshan made the decision to let her rest here. After dinner, Li Sikan wanted to go shopping. She dragged along a reluctant Xiao Fei and left Erin at home to accompany Mu Xiangshan. When Qiao Jin sent Song Yanqing out, he could hear Xiao Fei and Li Sikan arguing. Chapter 703. Song Yanqing had to go home that night, so Qiao Jin only walked him to the car at the gate. When he was about to leave, Qiao Jin waved his hand and said, "Rest early after you go back. I'll go back to school tomorrow." Song Yanqing nodded and said in a low voice, "You must tell me if there's anything. Also, about that female corpse." Qiao Jin nodded. "I'll keep an eye on her. She'll be fine." While they were talking in a low voice, Li Sikan and Xiao Fei got into the Mu family's chauffeur's car. Seeing the two talking, Li Sikan could not help but think, how did you get so lucky to have such a daughter? Don't steal her just because she's pretty. Go away. Xiao Fei retorted, "I adopted Qiao Jin from the orphanage. There's even proof. You're just jealous of me. How can I raise such a good daughter?" Li Sikan sneered. "She knows that she's not your biological daughter. Has she ever thought of looking for her biological parents?" This topic was a little tricky. Xiao Fei suddenly stopped talking. Li Sikan sensed that something was wrong. She turned to look at him and smiled. "Don't tell me you found her parents." Xiao Fei rolled his eyes. This woman's guess was really accurate. Xiao Fei had a complicated look on his face. "It's just a small dispute. It's hard to say. Anyway, Jean won't go back. Her biological parents aren't good. You're standing in her adoptive mother's position." Li Sikan looked at her from head to toe, but did not say anything. She only said, "Who are her biological parents? Are they rich?" Xiao Fei said, "You're such a hypocrite. All you care about is money. Is that a matter of whether you're rich or not? If you're rich, it's useless if you don't have a good character. By the way, why do you want me to go shopping with you? Can't you go tomorrow? Why do you have to go at night?" Li Sikan said, "Fine. Go back and ask your husband to go with me." Xiao Fei. "Driver, drive faster." After Xiao Fei and Li Sikan left, Qiao Jin glanced over and smiled. He whispered to Song Yanqing, Li Sikan and Li Sikan knew each other before. She saved Li Sikan before. Song Yanqing immediately understood. No wonder the relationship between Xiao Fei and Li Sikan wasn't as simple as it seemed. The two of them looked like they were at each other's throats at the dining table, but they spoke like children quarreling. He couldn't help but laugh. "Auntie Qiao is really interesting." "Qiao Jin, I think so too." The two of them looked at each other and smiled. If Xiao Fei was here, he would definitely say that this girl was not reserved. She had to tell Song Yanqing everything she knew. Song Yanqing looked at the girl's smiling face, and his heart was moved. He said softly, "You go back. I'll call you when I arrive. Remember to go to bed early." Qiao Jin nodded. "Okay." She watched Song Yanqing go back. After that, she prepared to go upstairs to her room. When she arrived at the living room, she saw Mu Xiangshan playing chess with Erin. When she saw Erin, she raised her head and called her with a smile, "Sister Qiao Jin." She was younger than Qiao Jin, so it was appropriate for her to call her sister. Qiao Jin nodded. When she was about to go upstairs, she suddenly saw a faint wisp of black energy above Erin's head. She paused for a moment and stopped in her tracks. Mu Xiangshan noticed her reaction and asked, "Do you have something to say?" Qiao Jin pursed her lips. "No." She saw that Erin's black energy was a wisp of death energy. The death energy was very small now. It would probably take a long time for it to appear. Chapter 704. However, it wouldn't be more than a few years. In other words, something would happen to Erin. She looked at the girl who was smiling shyly in front of her. She didn't see any malicious intent. When she saw the death aura, she just paused for a moment and went upstairs. Mu Xiangshan looked at her back as she turned and left. He was deep in thought. When he went upstairs, Qiao Jin received a message from Song Yanqing. Song Yanqing, something will happen to Erin. She will be murdered. The first time he saw Erin, he saw the scene of the girl's accident. He saw people's fates based on their fate. Erin's fate wasn't good, so he saw some clues. The difference was that he and Qiao Jin could see the cause of death but didn't know the time. The other knew the time but didn't know what would happen to Erin. When he saw this message, Qiao Jin was deep in thought. Erin was Li Saiken's daughter. After all, she was Feifei's friend and had interacted with Feifei before. Qiao Jin set up an array and calculated Erin's fate. It was a long time ago. He only calculated that Erin died because of family ties. Family ties didn't mean that it was done by relatives. Instead, it was possible that she was murdered because of the people around her. It would still be a long time, so there was no need to rush. After Qiao Jin looked at the fate line, he replied to Song Yanqing's message. It was Jin Jinyo, I got it. Li Sikan did stay in the Mu family for 3 days before returning to China. He left very quickly. Qiao Fei was the one who sent him off. Li Sikan left with Erin. Qiao Jin didn't say this casually. It was too long ago. If he said it in advance, it would lead to changes. Moreover, it wasn't something that could be said directly. She went back to school. Her life returned to normal. Now, she just had to wait for the female corpse in Meng Qingyu's house to be resurrected and find out what was going on. During this period of time, Qiao Jin also received a special business. The person who pushed the business was none other than Fan Jin. Fan Jin had a friendship with Phoenix Qian. Since Phoenix Qian went abroad, Fan Jin also went abroad to relax. The voice she recommended to Qiao Jin this time was also a female celebrity in the industry. She had helped Fan Jin a lot before and had a good relationship with Fan Jin. Now that she had encountered some problems, Fan Jin recommended her to Qiao Jin to test her fate. This celebrity was also very famous. If this news were to spread, the entertainment industry would probably tremble. Because he didn't believe that information on the internet could be kept secret, the other party insisted on a face-to-face meeting. Qiao Jin didn't intend to agree at first, but after thinking that this female celebrity had some skills, he was suddenly interested. Moreover, she was really generous with the money. At least, it showed that she was not short of money. If Qiao Jin agreed to a face-to-face meeting, the other party was willing to pay 10 million for just one meeting. Qiao Jin looked at the twists and turns of fate on the other party and agreed. In any case, the spirit group knew about her current identity. It was indeed better to discuss such a big deal offline. Therefore, after making an appointment, Qiao Jin met with the other party. The location was at the female celebrity's house because he didn't believe it was anywhere else. Qiao Jin followed the information provided by the other party and came to a very famous manor area in the capital, Zila Manor. Zila Manor was a villa area. Each family occupied a very large area. It was the most expensive area in the capital. Each family was worth hundreds of millions. Chapter 705. Zelu Manor was famous not only because of its size, but also because of its history. There were many legends that had been passed down. One of the mansions that this celebrity had bought was said to have been the residence of a historical figure. When Xiao Jin arrived, it was the celebrity's personal bodyguard who came out to greet her. Seeing how young Xiao Jin was, the celebrity was very surprised. After confirming her identity, she brought Xiao Jin in. The manor was very big. She had to take a car to enter from the outside. It took a few minutes to reach the mansion. There was a huge man-made lake in the front yard of the mansion. It was the size of the house. One could imagine how rich this celebrity was to be able to buy this area. This celebrity was a female celebrity named Xiao Junmin. Xiao Junmin's name could be said to be a household name. In the past, she was famous throughout Huaxia. She had been famous for a long time. She was famous throughout the country. She was only in her 30s, but she had been out of the entertainment industry for a few years. It was said that she was unmarried and was quite beautiful. When Xiao Jin was brought into the mansion by the bodyguard, she heard a cough. She walked to the beautifully decorated entrance. The interior was decorated in a European style. It was very grand but spacious. Xiao Junmin's manager stood at the door. When she saw Xiao Jin, she was a little surprised. "You are that master." In their imagination, a master should at least look like an immortal. In fact, he did look like an immortal. It was just that Xiao Jin was so young that they could see it with their naked eyes, which was a bit shocking. Being young meant that he had little experience. Xiao Junmin's manager, Li Lian, was a little hesitant. Her manager used to be very powerful. Xiao Jin couldn't be bothered to understand this. Seeing her, he nodded. "Where's Xiao Junmin?" Li Lian paused. When they were contacting each other online, they weren't sure if Xiao Jin could be trusted, so they gave him a fake name. She didn't expect him to know who was looking for her. However, Li Lian had shown her face in the media before. She thought that he only knew it was Xiao Junmin after seeing her. She nodded. "She's inside." At the very least, he was someone recommended by Fan Jin. He didn't know if he was reliable. Xiao Jin noticed that after she came in, the bodyguard left and closed the door. In an instant, only her manager and herself were left in the empty mansion. It looked a little lonely. If it weren't for the fact that it was daytime outside, the cold decoration style would have looked a little gloomy. When Li Lian brought her in, she said, "Don't tell anyone about what you saw," because the other party was a master, they still treated him with respect. However, this kind of respect was a little awkward. It seemed that it was not only because of Xiao Jin's identity. After Xiao Jin walked in, he understood what Li Lian meant. On the sofa in the side hall sat an extremely graceful woman. Her figure was extremely good, and just her back view alone was enough to charm thousands of people. However, if one ignored the strange stiffness of her legs and the old bark-like skin, she was an out-and-out beauty. When she heard someone come in, Xiao Junmin turned her head. Half of her face was still beautiful, but the other half, like the old bark, the tree had melted, as if it had been painted with realistic special effects. If a timid person saw Xiao Junmin's current appearance, they would probably scream in fright. Chapter 706. Who is she? Xiao Junmin subconsciously covered the other half of her face. She looked like she was about to cry. Her manager went out to pick up a master, but who knew that she would bring back such a young one? She subconsciously thought that someone had broken in. She was very afraid of being seen by anyone. If it was exposed, she wouldn't be able to live anymore. And it would cause panic. Who would have thought that the beautiful Xiao Junmin would become like this? Xiao Jin walked over and saw the tree on Xiao Junmin's face. He found it interesting. "Did you suffer a backlash?" Xiao Junmin was stunned for a moment. Her manager, Li Lian, came up to her and said, "This is the master recommended by Fan Jin, Fan Jin." Chao Junmin was a little stunned. So young. Why are you used to judging people by their age? The person who made the deal with you should be very young, right? Chao Junmin's body stiffened. What did you say? Xiao Jin smiled and said, "I can tell at a glance that there's a reason why you're so popular. There was no lack of beauties in that era." The reason why Chao Junmin was popular was not because she was really beautiful, but because she had some special means. She met an array master. This array master made a deal with her and gave Chao Junmin good luck, giving her the opportunity to become popular. And anything that involved borrowing luck was definitely not a good thing. Chao Junmin had already suffered a backlash. Chao Junmin was flustered by Chao Jin's words and subconsciously avoided Chao Jin's gaze. No one was willing to admit that their current achievements were obtained through dishonest means. Even Chao Junmin's manager didn't know. But now that she saw Chao Junmin's strange situation, anyone with a normal brain would know that there was definitely something wrong with her. Instead of going to the hospital, she went to a master. This proved that something was wrong. However, Chao Junmin had no other choice. Her manager had been with her for so many years and could be trusted. She couldn't find the person from back then, so there was nothing else she could do. Xiao Jin reached out and touched Chao Junmin's arm. Her arm had not completely transformed into a tree, but it felt like old bark, prickly and rough. Chao Junmin subconsciously wanted to withdraw her hand, but she found that she had to face Chao Jin's gaze. Xiao Jin set up an array formation on her body and easily found out some things. Chao Junmin had made some deals back then, but she wasn't completely in the wrong. She didn't even realize what price she had to pay for making this deal. But now that the price had come, he had to make a choice. Xiao Jin just asked her, "What is your request?" "You asked me to help you solve your current predicament." "Of course." Chao Junmin said without hesitation, "Don't tell me you're here to watch the show. I'm going to make a comeback next month, but now that I'm in this situation, I can't act anymore." When she said this, she was filled with sorrow. Acting was secondary. The key was that she couldn't see anyone at all. She could scare a group of people to death if she went out like this. If it was made big and posted on the internet, she wouldn't be able to live. Xiao Jin shook his head. "I'm asking you, do you want money or your life?" Chao Junmin's face froze. Even her manager's face changed. "Will I die?" At first, she thought that Chao Junmin just had some physical abnormalities. Chapter 707. Xiao Jin stood up and said, "You took someone else's things. Although you didn't know, you should have known. Now that your middleman is in trouble, you are not an evil person. If you give up everything you have now, I can save your life. If you don't, you will die in less than a month." Her words were simple and direct, and Chao Junmin was scared silly. Her face was pale. What was the difference between giving up everything she had now and dying? Li Lian's face also turned green. Giving up everything. Did she mean what Chao Junmin had now or all her fame and status? But there didn't seem to be any difference. Xiao Jin said, "Have you thought about it?" Chao Junmin had been in fear for the past few days. Now that she heard this, she broke down. "I asked you to solve this problem. Do you think my 10 million yuan is for nothing? If it wasn't for Fan Jin's recommendation, if you asked someone else, they would have let you die." Xiao Jin supported his chin and looked at her with interest. He was not angry. "I didn't come for the 10 million yuan. I just thought that your life could be saved. Of course, if you want to die, I won't stop you. You can do whatever you want." Not being angry didn't mean that she would spoil Chao Junmin. If Chow Junmin couldn't give up everything she had now, at most, she would give up her life. Chow Junmin's face stiffened. At first, she thought that Chow Nien was young, but now, every word she said pierced her heart. She still wanted to struggle. You don't even know what happened to me. How can you be so sure? I don't know what happened to you. You made a deal with someone else. How can I know the details? But isn't it easy to tell if you're going to die or not? She was a high and mighty female celebrity, but in front of Chow Jin, she was just an ordinary person. Chow Junmin was completely stunned. Li Lian came forward and asked Chow Jin, "Master, what is the reason?" Chow Jin pointed at Chow Junmin. Back then, she wanted to be famous, so she made a deal with someone. She only thought that she had met a master. Why don't you think about it? How can there be such a cheap thing in this world? Do you think that just by paying money, you can offset what you got? How did you get your money? You relied on the luck you obtained through trading, and this luck didn't belong to you in the first place. If you didn't make the deal, with your fate, you could have also become famous. However, you wouldn't have been able to reach your current status. Unfortunately, you had to get involved in such a matter and destroyed your fate. Now, you even have to bear the backlash. If you can't give up your current glory and wealth, then you can only bring it into the coffin and enjoy it. If Chow Jin had said that she was dead, it would have been fine, but he had said that she was destined to be popular. This made Chow Junmin unable to figure it out. Tears welled up in her eyes. At that time, she didn't suspect Chow Jin mainly because Chow Jin was right. She had indeed met someone at that time. The other party had said that he wanted to make a deal with her to make her popular. However, the other party only wanted money. After she had money, she had paid a lot of money to the other party. She had thought that the other party would pester her, but who knew that the other party had disappeared a few years ago? She had been unable to contact him, so she didn't take it seriously. It was only recently that she realized that some things were not so easy to get rid of. Chapter 708. After entering this industry, some things weren't as easy as outsiders thought. The female celebrities of her era had all sorts of unorthodox methods. They would do anything for fame. However, Chow Junmin became popular, so she thought she had found the right method. She had indeed found the right method, but there was still a price to pay. Li Lian was shocked when she heard Chow Jin's words. Junmin, you really, back then, when there were rumors in the industry, she didn't believe them as a manager. The main reason was that other female celebrities more or less had rumors of raising ghosts, but she had never seen such things around Chow Junmin. Chow Junmin didn't hide anything from her. There were no secrets at all. She thought that Chow Junmin really relied on her own strength and good luck to become famous. However, recently, Chow Junmin started to have problems. Only then did she realize that Chow Junmin was hiding something from her. She started to become strange and didn't even go to the hospital. Instead, she asked Li Lian to find a fortune teller for her. She found a few, but they were all liars. Only one of them said a word and was helpless. They prayed to God and Buddha. When Chow Junmin complained on her phone, Fan Jin found out and recommended this fortune teller. However, Fan Jin didn't know the specific reason for Chow Junmin's problem. She thought it was just a small problem. Who knew that Chow Junmin's problem was so big? Chow Junmin immediately cried. I was too young at that time. I had no choice. A talent scout took a fancy to me. I entered this industry because I wanted to earn money. But at that time, there were so many outstanding people. There were also people who were prettier than me. I just relied on my face. How could I be so lucky to become popular? I couldn't get any films or resources. Someone wanted to sleep with me, but I wasn't willing. I was even banned. If I hadn't met her. If I hadn't met that person and she told me there was such a method, I wouldn't have taken this path. She said that as long as I earn more money and do more good deeds, I'll pay her more. I've been doing charity for so many years. I've donated more than $1 billion. How many people in the industry have donated more than me? I thought it would be fine as long as it was over. Who knew? Who knew? Xiao Jin said softly, if everything in this world could be settled with money, it would have been over long ago. Doing charity to increase one's providence is built on people who haven't done anything wrong. If you borrow the providence of others, that's an original sin. Others might understand, but karma won't. Chao Junmin couldn't stop crying. Seeing her cry, Li Lian also felt sad. After all, she had been with her for more than 10 years, and she was also the one who brought her up. The two of them were like sisters. Li Lian looked at Xiao Jin and couldn't care less. Master, what method do we have to use to save her? Xiao Jin said, the one who borrowed luck was mainly the formation master. She was a medium. Now that something has happened to the formation master, she has suffered as well. You have to donate all your money, but I think you. She frowned. The person whose luck was borrowed should be fine. Chao Junmin was destined to become popular. It was just that it happened a little later. This borrowing of luck messed up her providence and forcefully brought forward the time. The person she borrowed luck from was definitely someone very impressive. There were rules to the backlash. Chao Junmin's backlash was her entire body turning into a tree. It was a little unusual. She looked at Chao Junmin and said, I want to know who the master who lent you luck is. Chapter 709. Chao Junmin cried as she told her the news. Of course, it was obvious that it was fake news. She definitely wouldn't tell Chao Junmin her name, but the other party was very young at that time. Chao Junmin still remembered the other party's approximate age and accent. She seems to be a female student, studying near the capital. I saw her once a few years ago. At that time, I heard someone call her Zhu. Xiao Jin shook her head. If the other party didn't come to her for fortune-telling, it wouldn't be enough to rely on Chao Junmin's information. She asked, do you have a photo? She didn't let me take a photo. Chao Junmin paused for a moment and suddenly said, I think I took a photo secretly at that time. I remember I have a record. Sister Li Lian, in my old phone, I didn't ask you to throw it away. Li Lian suddenly understood. Your old phone that you don't use anymore. Celebrities changed their phones quickly, but Chao Junmin had an old phone. She went to look for it and found that there was even a charger. She charged it and found that it could still be turned on. Chao Junmin took the phone and flipped through it. There was too much information, and she didn't delete most of the photos. After looking for a long time, her eyes lit up. Here it is. Xiao Jin took a look. It was a photo that wasn't very good. She could only see that the girl in the photo was indeed very young. There was only the curve of her side profile, and she didn't notice the camera. Against the light, the outline wasn't very obvious. She was from the capital. If there was an array master, the spirit group should have records. When it was time to use her connections, Xiao Jin didn't hesitate. Xiao Jin sent a photo to Zhongli Peining and asked her to help find the information. Who would have thought that Zhongli Peining's search would really yield some information? They had records of this array master. Zhongli Peining called her. The information is recorded and can't be leaked. I'll tell you directly. This array master was a member of the spirit group from the beginning. Her name is Ran Wanyue, but she emigrated many years ago and was in charge of the spirit group's affairs abroad. She disappeared a few years ago, and the spirit group hasn't been able to contact her. Where did you hear about her? Xiao Jin paused for a moment. Is your spirit group's recruitment so careless? Zhongli Peining was a little confused. Ha! No, Ran Wanyue is from the previous generation, so I'm not too sure. I know that she has an elder sister who is quite famous. She used to be a rich woman in Xiangdu and kept many popular male stars as her mistress. The last sentence seemed to be casually said by Zhongli Peining. Don't you know my idol Ferdinand? His father, Shi Kanyun, seemed to be kept by sister Ran Wanyue. Of course, I didn't ask her. This is what the others in the group said. She didn't hesitate to talk about the private gossip of her idol's family. Xiao Jin, she raised her eyebrows. Ferdinand his father. How did things come to this after so many twists and turns? Xiao Jin suddenly remembered that Song Yanqing had once said that the woman who kept Shi Kanyun was the foundation of his fortune. Later, after Shi Kanyun got up, the woman disappeared, and no one knew where she was. The woman who kept Shi Kanyun was Ran Wanyue's elder sister. Ran Wanyue was an array master who helped Xiao Jumin borrow luck, but now it was backfiring. Song Yanqing's fate had been changed. She suddenly felt that some things were not over and had been strung together. Chapter 710. The array master who Song Yanqing had swapped his life providence was dead. Xiao Jin could sense it clearly through her perception. If this array master could survive after Song Yanqing took back his life providence, then this array master was even more heaven-defying than Xiao Jin. However, Xiao Jin had a feeling that Ran Wanyue must have had some other involvement with this matter since she was involved in such a distant relationship. Now that she had easily obtained some information about Ran Wanyue from Zhongli Peining, she could directly use the array to deduce where she was now. In front of Xiao Junmin, Xiao Jin directly began to deduce where Ran Wanyue had gone. However, she was a little surprised by this deduction. Ran Wanyue was dead. However, she did not die when she went missing a few years ago. She had died recently. In other words, Ran Wanyue was indeed dead. The array had lost its suppression and began to backfire on Xiao Junmin. Moreover, she saw that Ran Wanyue had died in the country. After a pause, she saw Xiao Junmin's worried and desperate expression and said, "I'm going somewhere. I'll come back tomorrow." Xiao Junmin immediately asked, "Where are you going?" Now that she knew that Xiao Jin was a master, her tone became more respectful. Xiao Jin said, "I'm going to see where the person who lent you luck died." She said it very calmly, but when Xiao Junmin heard the word died, she shivered and widened her eyes. Is she really dead? Generally speaking, it was very likely that she could not be contacted. Xiao Jin said, "You'll know when you see the body." After saying that, she directly left. Her agent, Li Lian, asked someone to send Xiao Jin away. When she returned, Xiao Junmin was in tears. Could she be a liar who told the world about me after she went out? I don't think so. And she didn't pay. Xiao Junmin was speechless. When she came, she did not even ask for a deposit, which meant that Xiao Junmin had not paid yet. Xiao Jin left Xiao Junmin's manor and booked a plane ticket. The array master died in Xiangdu, another city across the river from Shuidu. In the last century, the entertainment industry in this city was very developed. Shi Kanyun started his business there. Moreover, Xiangdu was also very popular with some unorthodox practices. According to Zhongli Peining, there were still many active array masters, but they did not have any contact with the array masters on the mainland. With the help of the spirit group, it was very easy for her to go there. She arrived in Xiangdu that very afternoon. This city gave her a very dull feeling. Through the array, she found the place where Ran Wanyue had died. When she saw the location, she pondered for a moment. In front of him was a mountain forest. Next to it was an old tube-shaped apartment that was about to be demolished. It seemed that there were still people living there. On the land where Ran Wanyue died, there was a patch of towering trees growing. However, they were separated and green. It could even be used as a ready-made park landscape. The place next to the mountain forest was an asphalt road. Near the edge of the asphalt road, there was a pile of fallen branches and leaves. There was a place on the edge of the road that was bulging, as if it had been moved by someone. It seemed that something was buried there. Qiao Jin lowered her eyes and thought for a few seconds. Then, she decisively called the police anonymously. Because Ran Wanyue's body was below, she could not dig it up. Moreover, there was more than one body below. The shape of the trees in front of her was very similar to the old bark skin that grew out of Chao Junmin after she had suffered a backlash. Although most of the trees were the same, Qiao Jin knew that Ran Wanyue had died here and Chao Junmin had suffered a backlash for a reason. Chapter 711. The police soon arrived. Qiao Jin had called the police, but they did not know who had called the police. They only received the news that there was news underground, so they were a little nervous. Qiao Jin watched from a building far away. No one knew she was there. Less than 10 minutes after she saw the police arrive, she had already dug something out. She was shouting and yelling for people to go over and help. Many police officers came. Half an hour later, Qiao Jin saw them carrying a corpse out of the ground. The number of residents who came to watch the show increased. When they saw the corpse, everyone exclaimed in shock. They were shocked that there was a corpse here. The corpse was wrapped in a body bag. When it was dug out, the corpse was extremely smelly. It almost made people want to vomit. However, that was not the main point. The forensic doctor came and opened the body bag. In an instant, a stench spread through the area. Those who were close by almost fainted from the stench. A large group of police officers almost vomited on the spot. It was not that the corpse was scary, but it was too smelly. It was so smelly that it was unbearable. The people who came to watch the show all dispersed. The stench from the soul was unbearable. Even if they were just here to watch the show, they could not stand it anymore. The police officers quickly found masks and put them on. The forensic doctor also put on the masks again before opening the body bag. After the stench dissipated, it was barely bearable. When the forensic doctor saw the corpse, he was stunned. The corpse in the body bag was not that scary, but it was hard to understand. It was the corpse of a woman. Her face was swollen and pale. However, the strange thing was that the right half of her face had mutated. It had become old bark like a tree trunk, causing her skin to be damaged and her facial features to be distorted. The forensic doctor had seen many corpses, but he had never seen such a strange one. He was shocked. When the other police officers saw it, they were also shocked. However, before they could carefully examine the corpse, the police officer who was digging the corpse said nervously, "There seems to be another corpse in the pit." The others immediately looked over. Indeed, there seemed to be something at the bottom of the pit that had just been dug out. It seemed to be a human finger bone. The police officers immediately continued digging. The corpse from earlier was to be sent to the police station for investigation. No one knew who had called the police, nor did they know why a body had been buried here. This could be considered big news in the vicinity. Not long after, the other corpse was dug up as well. It was the same female corpse, but it looked similar to the first corpse. Soon, the identity of this female corpse was recognized on the spot. That was because she was Ran Baoqing, a famous rich woman in Xiangdu in the last century. It was as if she had died at the best time. Her current appearance was still as complete as before her death, allowing others to see her magnificent charm. Actually, she was quite good-looking at that time. She was rich and pretty in that era, so she was the object of many pursuers. After Ran Baoqing's body was dug out, Xiao Jin stood in the distance and watched. Suddenly, he saw something floating out of Ran Baoqing's body. That thing was a ray of light. Xiao Jin stretched out his hand slightly, and the ray of light rushed towards her. When she looked down, she heard a tender voice. "Big sister." Xiao Jin turned his head. It was a little boy in a t-shirt, about 7 or 8 years old. Chapter 7:12. The boy looked young, and his family background was probably not very good. There were traces of seams at the waist of his t-shirt. The children living here were indeed not very well off. The people in Xiangdu spoke the local dialect, but this child spoke pure Mandarin. He looked at Xiao Jin and asked cautiously, "Sister, what are you doing here?" Xiao Jin stood on such a high floor and looked at things in the distance. To this little boy, she was like a fairy flying in the sky that he saw in cartoons when he was young. Xiao Jin smiled and said, "I'm standing here." The boy still maintained a trace of innocence. He walked up and looked at Xiao Jin seriously and curiously. "Sister, are you a fairy?" Xiao Jin said, "I'm not." The boy said, "But you look exactly like a fairy." Xiao Jin said cruelly, "Watch less TV." "It's a lie." The boy was speechless. Xiao Jin saw that Ran Baoqing's body had been dug up and the items had been obtained. She wanted to find out what happened back then. What are you doing up there? Come down quickly." A woman screamed. A woman in the same ordinary clothes rushed upstairs and stared at the little boy. "What are you doing here?" She saw Xiao Jin again. She was a little surprised and a little flustered. "Miss, this child didn't say anything wrong, right?" Her panic was a little strange. Xiao Jin just shook her head. The little boy named Yu suddenly pointed at Xiao Jin and said, "This sister is a fairy." "Mom, didn't you say that fairies don't exist?" "Look, I saw a fairy today." Unexpectedly, this sentence made the woman quite nervous. Her face turned pale. She looked at Xiao Jin and then at him. At that moment, she looked at Xiao Jin with a little fear in her eyes. She covered the little boy's mouth as if she wanted to drag him down. She scolded in a low voice, "Don't talk nonsense, don't talk nonsense." When Xiao Jin saw how nervous she was, she looked down at the boy again. Yu's mouth was covered, so she didn't make a sound. She followed her mother quietly. Xiao Jin stared at her for 2 seconds and suddenly said, "Wait." The woman's body stiffened as she looked at Xiao Jin. Xiao Jin walked over and said coldly, "Why are you so nervous when you see me?" The woman looked at Xiao Jin, her eyes darting up and down. She stared at Xiao Jin for a long time, as if she was trying to determine if she was a real person. After a long time, she felt Xiao Jin's fresh breath. She let out a sigh of relief, but she refused to let go of the child's mouth. She only smiled apologetically. "The child likes to talk nonsense." "Miss, don't take it seriously." She spoke fluent Mandarin. She should have migrated from the city across the river from Xiangdu, not a local. Xiao Jin smiled. "He said that I was a fairy. How is that nonsense? Or are you afraid that I'm really something he imagined?" The woman's face suddenly turned pale. Her body began to tremble violently. She shouldn't have been so frightened by Xiao Jin's words. Her whole body was trembling. Xiao Jin glanced at Yu and suddenly reached out to touch his forehead. "He's too young. His ability is not so strong." He can't transform into a living person. Huff. Huff. Huff, the woman almost screamed from her throat. She was almost scared out of her wits by Xiao Jin's words. However, she seemed to be controlled by something and couldn't scream. Chapter 7:13. Xiao Jin bent down slightly and looked into Yu's clear and curious eyes. "You, how old are you?" Her tone became more relaxed, and she seemed to be unusually gentle towards this little boy. Ju felt his mother's hand loosen a little for no reason. He immediately answered, "I'm 8 years old." His voice was loud and clear, and he spoke very loudly. Xiao Jin nodded and continued to ask gently, "How long has it been since you moved here?" Ju lowered his head and counted with his fingers. "It's been 3 years, right?" The woman couldn't speak, and her entire body was trembling slightly. At this moment, when she saw Xiao Jin talking to Yu, she was even more panicked. Xiao Jin stood up straight again and patted the woman's shoulder. "You don't have to be so flustered. I won't hurt him. We're the same kind of people." This child in front of her was an unexpected surprise. This was because Xiao Jin had never thought that she would be able to find an extremely rare spiritualist here. This was the second spiritualist she had met besides Song Yanqing. Yu in front of her was still too young. His ability was innate, but it wasn't very strong. This was because he didn't know what his ability was at the moment, and he couldn't use it properly. However, there must have been something abnormal about him that made his mother so scared. The woman looked at Xiao Jin, and her eyes were about to tear up. "Miss Yu," Xiao Jin nodded. "Let's go in and talk." She wasn't in a hurry about Ran Wanyue's matter. After all, the police were going to transport the body back, and they still had to do an investigation. Compared to a business deal, discovering a spiritualist was the most important thing. Moreover, Yu was obviously not discovered by anyone. Or rather, these spiritualists didn't realize what a spiritualist represented. Perhaps they didn't even know that other than wizards and array masters, there was also a kind of existence called spiritualists in this world. The woman nodded in horror and turned around stiffly. Then, she walked downstairs with Ju in tow. They lived in this seemingly precarious tube-shaped apartment, and their living conditions weren't very good. However, hiding here could very well avoid others discovering Yu's abnormality. The woman was Yu's mother. From the moment she realized that something was wrong with Yu, she was afraid that Yu would be captured for research, so she brought him to this poor place. Their family's conditions weren't very good. She wanted to move to a better place, but there was nothing she could do. She didn't know who Xiao Jin was, but when she heard that she was the same kind of person as Yu, she felt an inexplicable panic and a kind of surprise. So her Yu wasn't the only one who was different. She went downstairs with them. They lived on the 5th floor on the west side of the building. There was a long corridor, and on the left side was the balcony. On the right side, there were many houses. Every house was very small. Entering the room, the kitchen and bathroom were in a narrow space. Other than a bed, a table, and a small cabinet, this room couldn't fit anything else. There were only some small toys under the table. There was almost no place for people to walk. The woman walked into the room. Her body was a little stiff, and her tone was a little panicked. "The room is a little small." Because she could see that Xiao Jin's clothes and temperament were completely different from them. Xiao Jin shook her head. "It's okay." She didn't care about these things. Chapter 7:14. The woman was still a little uneasy, mainly because the room was narrow. She walked inside and pulled out a small stool from under the table. It was obviously a child's seat. She usually sat on the bed when she ate. You naturally sat beside the table, and there was a layer of building blocks on the floor next to her. There were also some cartoon posters that children liked posted all over the room. How should she put it? There was some warmth that belonged to her family in the narrow and difficult room. Xiao Jin didn't look around. She sat on the small stool and asked naturally, "Have you lived here for 3 years?" The woman poured her a glass of water and said a little uneasily, "Yes." She carefully closed the door and sat cross-legged on the other side of the table. She looked at Xiao Jin hesitantly and said, "You said, you and you are the same kind of people." Xiao Jin nodded and put down the cup. "When did you start to have the abnormality you think he has?" Yu Chu was stunned for a moment. Then, she thought carefully and said, "Probably since he was a baby. What abnormality could there be in a baby?" It was probably the obsession of a baby. A baby's obsession was nothing more than eating and sleeping. At first, Yu Chu didn't realize what was wrong until she couldn't take care of you. Then, she saw the milk bottle automatically appear in Yu's hand. He was already 3 months old at that time. When she saw it for the first time, Yu Chu was almost scared to death. She quickly realized that there was more to the matter than she had imagined. For example, no matter how busy she was, she would have the urge to appear by Ah Ju's side as soon as Ah Ju cried, even though she had planned to take care of the baby first and feed him later. No matter where she was, she seemed to be able to sense the child's tears immediately. At that time, Yu was too young. His obsession was nothing more than eating and seeing her. However, Yu was too young. She was still a baby and couldn't express her basic concepts. When she realized that something was wrong with Yu, she moved with Yu. Yu was her only child. She didn't want any harm to come to Yu, even if he might be a freak in the eyes of others. He might be hiding secrets that she didn't understand. At first, she was afraid, but she gradually got used to it when she found that there was no danger. It wasn't until Yu grew up and could speak that she realized that the situation was worse than she had imagined. All children loved toys, and Yu was no exception. When Yu saw something outside, she would often pester Yu Chu and say, "Mommy, I want it. How could Yu Chu afford those toys?" She had to take Yu home. At first, Yu would cry and throw a tantrum, and when he did, the toy would appear in his hand, appearing out of thin air. Yu Chu had seen this many times and was finally certain. Yu has the ability to make her wishes come true. Xiao Jin was silent for a moment. When a spiritualist changed the rules, it could also be seen as her wish coming true. Yu Chu wasn't happy about this ability. She realized that if she didn't educate Yu properly, there would be a bigger problem with his ability. She began to teach Yu to control himself. He had to control his desires for other things and not speak carelessly. This was because every time he said something seriously, it was very likely that it would become a reality. When Yu Chu found out, she was being targeted by a perverted man next door. Yu said to her, "Mommy, he bullied you. I want him to suffer retribution." Chapter 7:15. That night, the wretched man was hit on the head by a stone that fell out of nowhere. He almost lost his life. She didn't even dare to stay in a place with acquaintances. She moved further and further away with Yu. Because of the change, she didn't have any good abilities. Her life was very difficult. Even so, she didn't teach Yu that he could reap without sowing. She didn't think about these things at all. She just thought that Yu's ability must not be discovered by anyone. She didn't want them to be separated. The older Yu grew, the stronger his ability became. He even asked the baby to come back to life and talk to him. Yu Chu was frightened at that time. Until now, Yu Chu didn't dare to send Yu to school. She could only buy some books at home to educate him. Because she was afraid that the child couldn't control himself and used his ability to hurt other children. After hearing this, Xiao Jin supported his chin and thought for a while, "You are kind." "I'm not kind either." Yu Chu still had a layer of fear on her face. "I just think that if something happens to the child, he will definitely be taken away. I don't want him to be trapped in a laboratory or be killed." Even if she hadn't eaten pork before, she had seen pigs run. She was very clear about what would happen to her child if others found out that there was something wrong with him. Society couldn't tolerate heresy. She had never seen other spiritual readers. Naturally, she didn't know what kind of existence the child was. At this moment, Yu Chu looked at Xiao Jin with a deep fear in her eyes. She held you in her arms and asked with expectation, "Do you also have this ability?" Xiao Jin shook his head. "There are spiritual readers in nature. There are 3 kinds of spiritual readers. I am an array master. Your child is a spiritual reader." Spiritual reader. Yu Chu had never heard of this before. She was confused at the moment. Xiao Jin said, "It's useless for me to tell you now. Your child must go with me. He can't hide his ability. The older he grows, the stronger his ability will be. At that time, as long as he has an idea in his heart, he can change a lot of things. It's useless for you to trap him here now. If he is found by others, he will either be locked up or killed." Yu Chu shuddered. Her face immediately turned pale. "But, where can we go? Where could he go without being discovered?" "As long as there were people, they would definitely be discovered." Xiao Jin said indifferently, "Do you believe me? If you trust me, then follow me. You have no other choice. This child needs to be educated. You know very well that I can control him." Yu Chu hesitated. In the face of a stranger like Xiao Jin, it was unrealistic to say that he believed him completely. However, when she saw Xiao Jin's appearance, she felt a sense of conviction. In addition, now that the child had been discovered, she could see the child's ability at a glance. She also knew what kind of existence he was. At least, he was the same kind of person as the child. At this time, Yu looked at Xiao Jin and asked innocently, "Fairy sister, do you want me to go with you?" Xiao Jin nodded. However, Yu shook her head and shrank into her mother's arms. "Fairy sister, I can't go with you. I want to go with my mother. If I go, there will be no one to protect her." Yu Chu's eyes turned red. So this was what this child had always thought in her heart. He wanted to protect his mother. Chapter 7:16. Xiao Jin chuckled. "Why would I break you up for no reason? Of course, your mother will take you with her. For a young spirit master like you, it wasn't enough to rely on formations to restrain her. Only by having the person she loved by her side would she be able to restrain her. Yu Chu also had some ability to restrain you to this extent. Otherwise, if a child's thoughts were serious and strong, who knew how much trouble you would cause?" Yu was relieved and looked at her mother. "Mom, let's go with fairy sister." Yu Chu looked at Xiao Jin and lowered her head to think for a few seconds. Then, she looked up and forced a smile. "Okay." Leaving with Xiao Jin was also a helpless choice. Because she didn't know who Xiao Jin was. Xiao Jin stood up and said warmly, "Pack some things. You don't have to worry about who I am. I won't hurt you or you." Yu Chu nodded and let Yu pack up with her. She usually worked in a small garment factory nearby and earned a small salary every month. It was barely enough to support her and Yu. When Yu Chu and Yu were packing up, Xiao Jin suddenly felt a strange fluctuation. She suddenly said, "Someone's coming. You're inside." She opened the door and saw a group of people downstairs. They were dressed in suits and leather shoes. They clearly weren't people who should be here. When they came, they looked around the tube-shaped buildings and finally locked onto Xiao Jin's building. When they saw Xiao Jin upstairs, they were slightly surprised. There were 3 men and 1 woman in the group. The woman glanced at Xiao Jin and then looked at the people next to her. "Is that little boy here?" The man nodded. The woman looked at Xiao Jin. Her gaze suddenly focused. "She's not an ordinary person. It seems that someone has discovered her." The few men looked at Xiao Jin with unkind gazes. "That child's ability is too heaven-defying. We must not let others find out. Otherwise, if the mainland sends people over, we will lose a helper for nothing." The woman snorted, "Since he was discovered in my territory, he naturally belongs to us. What does this have to do with the continent?" Their words fell into Xiao Jin's ears. You and the others packed up quickly. There was nothing to pack in the first place. As for the rest of the furniture, Xiao Jin said lightly, "I don't want it anymore. I can't take it with me." Yu Chucheong was scared. Hearing this, he hesitated and said, "These can be sold." Xiao Jin said, "It's too late now." Yu Chu's expression changed. "What do you mean?" Xiao Jin nodded at the group of people downstairs. "It seems that your son has been discovered. Fortunately, she had come in time today. Otherwise, a spiritualist would have disappeared." Could it be that the fluctuation in Xiao Junmin's birth chart was related to this? That was not right. A spiritualist was not directly related to Xiao Junmin. How could he appear in her birth chart? It seemed like it was purely a coincidence. He had a hunch. When Yu Chu saw the group of people, he was scared out of his wits. Then what should we do? From the looks of it, they were here to capture you. They were either doing experiments or doing something unknown. Most of the people who wore suits and leather shoes were dangerous people. Xiao Jin said softly, "Continue packing. Don't worry, I'll handle it." Chapter 7:17. The group of people also came up directly. They came up very quickly and appeared on the 5th floor in the blink of an eye. Xiao Jin just looked downstairs and didn't even blink at their arrival. A few of them tried to approach Xiao Jin slowly with vigilance in their eyes. When they found her standing in front of the little boy's house, they were even more sure of something. The woman stepped out and looked directly at Xiao Jin. "Who are you?" They couldn't tell at a glance. She might be an ordinary person, or she might not be an ordinary person. Xiao Jin slowly looked at them. The girl's cold and delicate face startled them. Her temperament was not like that of an ordinary person. She looked at them and smiled meaningfully. "Who do you think I am?" The woman's eyes darkened. She looked at Xiao Jin and said, "You are not a member of our Xiangdu spirit group. I don't care who you are. We need to take this family away. I hope you can back down a little." The Xiangdu spirit group was different from the spirit group in the capital. Although the spirit group in the capital was the headquarters, it didn't actually control the Xiangdu spirit group. After all, the long-term situation had caused the people here to be very resistant to the mainlanders. In addition, Xiao Jin spoke fluent Mandarin, so they knew that she was not a local. However, they didn't receive any notice from the spirit group, which meant that the person in front of them couldn't have been sent by the spirit group. Thinking of this, their tone became more aggressive. They just found this little boy and observed him for a long time. Where did this girl come from? Xiao Jin shook her head. "I will take this child to the mainland. You can't even deal with him." Her words made the woman's face change. "You were sent by the capital? Why didn't we receive any notice?" Xiao Jin said, "Do the headquarters need to notify you?" However, the people of Xiangdu's spirit group had always thought highly of themselves. Qiao Jin's words were undoubtedly contemptuous of them. The woman said directly, "We didn't receive any orders. You can't take this child away today. Otherwise, don't blame us for being rude." Unlike the spirit group in the mainland, the spirit group in Xiangdu's spirit group was a mix of formation masters and wizards. After all, there were fewer people. It was not as extravagant as the mainland, where hundreds of magi could be found. Moreover, the spirit group in Xiangdu was much more chaotic. They were involved in many things and were not under the jurisdiction of the spirit group. This was where the problem lay. The few of them got into position. There were 2 wizards and 2 formation masters. Before the formation masters could make a move, the wizards attacked Xiao Jin first. Suddenly, a special golden thread appeared outside the balcony. It extended from both sides and rushed toward Xiao Jin. Xiao Jin didn't even move his hand. In the blink of an eye, the golden thread broke. Her eyes were locked on these people, and the smile on her lips was a little cold. "I don't need to inform anyone when I do something." As soon as he finished speaking, several people in front of him fell to the ground. He was lying on the ground in a mess, as if he had suddenly fainted. Ayaya, on the other side, an old woman came out with a basin. When she saw the scene in the corridor, she was so scared that she screamed. She glanced at Xiao Jin, turned around, and went back into her room. She closed the door in a panic. "We're done packing." Yu Chu's voice came from inside the door. When she came out with you, she was shocked when she saw the unconscious people in the corridor. Xiao Jin said indifferently, "It's okay. Come with me, oh. Chapter 7:18. She still had to investigate Ran Wanyua's matter, so she was not in a hurry to go back. However, Yu and Yu Chu could not stay in Xiangdu. She did not inform the spirit group, but called Song Yanqing. When Song Yanqing received her call, the first thing he said was, "I heard that you went to Xiangdu." Qiao Jin replied, "Yes, I did something." There was also an unexpected surprise. "I found a spiritual master of speech." A spiritual master of speech. Song Yanqing raised his eyebrows slightly. A second spiritual master of speech. He knew very well how rare spiritual masters of speech were. Until now, Qiao Jin had only found the second one. It was indeed strange. "Yes, an 8-year-old boy named Yu. He, his mother, and I are all in Xiangdu now. However, I have not finished my business and will only be back tomorrow. I want you to arrange for someone to pick them up first. They can't stay here. The spirit group in Xiangdu has already set their eyes on them." Song Yanqing understood immediately and said, "Okay, I will arrange for someone to pick them up immediately. However, what are you doing in Xiangdu? It has something to do with Ferdinand's father." Shi Canyon was kept as a mistress, and the body of the rich woman who kept him was found. Song Yanqing was silent for a moment. Ran Baoqing. Obviously, he knew about this matter. It is said that she disappeared more than 10 years ago. She is indeed dead. Qiao Jin said, "Her death was quite unexpected. I found an array point on her body. This array point is quite strange. It killed her sister, Ran Wanyue." Ran Wanyue was an array master and even worked in the spirit group in the capital. She emigrated a long time ago and disappeared a few years ago. When I came over, I found her dead here. She was killed by the array point on Ran Baoqing's body. Don't you think it's quite interesting? Ran Baoqing had been dead for more than 10 years. An absolutely dead person had no ability to take revenge. However, a strange array point appeared on her body. This array point not only killed Ran Baoqing, but also caused a backlash on everything on Ran Baoqing. This was also the reason why Chao Junmin suffered a backlash. Song Yanqing chuckled. If you think it's interesting, then you can investigate there. If you need any help, just ask me. Xiao Jin said, okay. After hanging up, someone came to pick up Yu Chu and Yu. Xiao Jin sent them to the car and confirmed that they were Song Yanqing's men. She even set up an array formation, so that she could immediately sense if there were any obstacles on the way. She found herself a hotel to check in. In the room, she set up a formation around the Xiangdu police station and obtained the information she wanted. Ran Baoqing and Ran Wanyua's bodies were transported back to the police station, which shocked many people. The spirit group had already sent people to investigate. Because their bodies to the corpses was to because the body to the point were her bodies, except for her to the point, her entire body to the was her bodies. The forensic doctor said that she had been dead for more than 10 years, but her face did not show any signs of decay. It was just that her body had turned into a tree trunk. Even though the spirit group had seen a lot of things, they had never seen such a strange thing. Moreover, some knife wounds were found on Ran Baoqing's body. It was speculated that she was killed with a knife when she died. But why did her body become a tree trunk? The police station and the spirit group were still investigating this matter. Xiao Jin was also a little restless because the spirit group that she had knocked out in the afternoon came to her door. Chapter 719. Before she even opened the door, she could already feel the tight encirclement outside. Although it was not worth mentioning to her, she felt that it was too annoying. A large group of people were guarding outside Xiao Jin's door, looking serious and scared. In the afternoon, they didn't even know what was going on before they fainted. This made them realize how terrifying Xiao Jin's ability was. Now, not only was he here, but he also brought a bunch of police officers. They had already sent a message to the mainland and were waiting for the notification. The woman wanted to knock on the door, but she hesitated when she thought of what happened in the afternoon. Just as she was thinking, Xiao Jin's door was suddenly opened. The woman felt something tighten around her neck as if she was being forcefully lifted by someone and dragged in. She screamed, and before anyone could react, she was dragged in. Then, the door closed with a bang. The others narrowed their eyes. When they came forward to break the door, they found that they couldn't open it. After the woman was dragged in, her body floated in the air uncontrollably. Her eyes widened as she looked at the girl in front of her in horror. She was pouring herself a glass of water. Her movements were elegant and steady. It was impossible to tell that the person controlling her was this girl. The woman found it difficult to breathe. She suddenly regretted her rashness. What do you want to do with so many people? Did I do something wrong? Xiao Jin raised her head. There was a smile on her lips, but her eyes were cold. Are you so used to being left alone in Xiangdu that you even want to meddle in the affairs of the headquarters? No. No, the woman found it difficult to breathe. She realized the seriousness of the matter and didn't dare to refute Xiao Jin. She had called the headquarters, but there was no clear reply. The key was that she didn't receive any notification. How could she be willing to let Xiao Jin be taken away by the little boy? Even if there was a notification, they wouldn't care at all given the attitude of the Xiangduling group. They only wanted to snatch the girl, but they didn't expect to kick an iron plate. Since you have an opinion, I'll let you see the headquarters' opinion. Xiao Jin said and called He Yao. He Yao had just been promoted and was qualified to take charge of some things. Xiao Jin called her and said, I found a little boy in Xiangdu. Now, the spirit group in Xiangdu says that I'm not qualified. What do you think I should do? He Yao. Please wait a moment. How could He Yao not understand what Xiao Jin meant? If Xiao Jin brought people here, wouldn't he be bringing people here for her? Many of her subordinates were recruited by Xiao Jin. How would she dare to meddle in his affairs? He Yao knew how people in Xiangdu did things, so she wisely called her boss. After a while, the woman's phone rang. Xiao Jin reached out a hand, and the phone flew out of the woman's pocket and connected automatically. A man's voice was clear. Zhong Jian, if you meet a girl with the surname Qiao, don't bother about what she wants to do. The woman called Zhong Jian turned pale. The man didn't get a response, so he said again, "Did you hear me?" Zhong Jian saw Xiao Jin's playful expression and could only say with difficulty, "Yes." You're tuning into the LoveLore Library YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.